Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku protected his pregnant wife from ghosts? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Achiko stepped through the door and started to cry. There were peonies on the counter, and Deku was not in the room. She had asked him if they could have a serious conversation, and he had mailed her flowers. She supposed it would be fine, they could talk about it later. He had texted her the letter K. She wasn't sure why she hadn't seen this coming. She looked at the card, and a soft smile came to her lips. It was all of the research he had done on ways they could do it. Adoption pros and cons, IVF pros and cons, different places they could go for help, and his top 3 preferences. She wiped her eyes as she sat down and read through it. She jumped when Deku came into the kitchen and kissed her forehead. "Oh no. I didn't want to make you cry, I'm sorry." He frowned, running his fingers through her hair. "Did you change your mind?" He frowned. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to dash." Achiko frowned, kissing him and shaking her head. "No, I thought the flowers were a gift because you couldn't come home tonight, like my birthday and our anniversary," she murmured. Deku frowned, looking at the ground. "I'm sorry, no, I made sure to come home tonight. Titch, this is a big decision. I don't think we should make it separately." He smiled at her. Achiko sighed. When we were in high school, you said you thought it was a bad idea for pro-heroes to have kids." Deku nodded, and he was still hesitant, but as he got older, he felt himself getting more and more comfortable with the idea of a little one of his own. "Things change. I would love to have a kid. I do think that if we do this, one of us should retire." He sighed. "But I'm ready if you are." Achiko swallowed hard. "One of us?" "Yeah, one of us. So that there isn't a chance the kid loses both of their parents. Just say you think I should retire. Don't dash." She shook her head sadly. "Don't pretend you would even consider it." Deku sighed. "I actually might." He didn't think he would, but he also hated thinking about his child growing up without a dad. He remembered Koda. He felt a little bit guilty. Achiko frowned slightly but nodded. "So I would prefer to go the biological route." Achiko murmured. Deku nodded. "Okay, if you're sure. I just didn't know if you would want to take the time off to carry it. Didn't want to assume anything." He sighed. It also made him nervous. He had no idea if he could pass his quirk down to a child. He knew he didn't want that, although the idea of a child with those big brown eyes and her cute little nose did make his heart melt. Achiko sighed. "Would I be taking time off to carry it? I mean, I thought maybe dash." Deku frowned, looking at his feet. "It would be my kid. The #1 hero. It would make you an even bigger target than you already are. I would like it if you were more careful, yes. I don't want you to die because I was careless." Achiko sighed. "Because you were careless? Careless enough to what?" Deku sighed, looking at his feet sadly. "I want you to be safe. That's all I am trying to say." She sighed. "You don't trust me to protect myself. I don't want you having to protect yourself from every villain in Japan because of me. I don't want you getting beaten or killed or poisoned to hurt me. And I know there are chances of that now, but once you're PR'd, they can get so much more creative." Achiko sighed, looking at the ground as she put her hands in her pockets. "Maybe we should both take time off for the baby," she murmured. Deku nodded. "Why, we can both go into hiding for the baby." He smiled at her softly. Deku honestly was a little bit worried. He had no idea how he would handle it when she got PR'd. He also wasn't sure which would be worse, becoming overprotective or not being protective enough. Either way, people could die. His wife and child, or civilians, friends. Achiko smiled, slipping her arms around him and kissing his forehead. "Just a little break." Deku sighed, but smiled at her softly, holding her close and looking at her eyes. A child would not be a little break. It would be the end of life as they knew it, but it could potentially be the beginning of a new, happier life. Deku was happy. He wanted this. He had thought about it several times. Every man was scared at the prospect of fatherhood. He would be a good father. He would be a good husband. He was a good husband. Everything was going to be fine, and this was a good idea. He grabbed her hips and pulled her close. "So, when do we start?" he smirked before laughing and kissing her head. Achiko sighed, trying to think. I'm really not sure. She murmured, looking at his eyes before kissing his nose. Deku smiled at her and nodded with a sigh, resting his head on her shoulder. He was a bit worried he would lose his nerve by the time he had an opportunity, but he had done so many things that seemingly had higher risks, so why was this so scary? Because he was risking her life, and the life of an innocent child. He was going to change the point around which his world revolved, and potentially watch the wonderful celestial object blow up and cause his life to spin out of orbit again. Risking planting a parasite inside of his wife that would cook her from the inside out, or otherwise poison her. He ran the risk of becoming a single father, having to grieve the death of his wife without his work to distract him and with a child screaming every couple hours. Could he love his child if it killed Achiko coming out of her, rendering him incapable of doing his job because he had to focus on their well-being? Deku was terrified to find out. Deku? Are you okay? Why, I'm fine. Ugh. Dinner and then whatever you want. Achiko frowned, kissing his forehead as he looked at the ground. You sure? Deku nodded his head. Why, yeah. I'm excited. He forced a smile, looking at her and kissing her softly. Achiko sighed, resting her head on his shoulder. He sighed, resting his head on hers and holding her firmly in his arms. She couldn't be more safe than she was right now. He wished he could keep her there forever. He pulled away and kissed her forehead. What do you want to eat? He sighed. I don't want to eat out. She sighed. It was always so hard to go anywhere with him. Deku sighed, rubbing her back and nodding. Order out? Or we can cook. Achiko sighed, looking at her toes. Order out, she said softly, a gentle smile coming to her lips. Deku smiled. Udon? Achiko smiled at her toes and nodded. How did you know? You always want udon when you're worried. Deku grinned. As Achiko kissed him. I'll order from that place in the mall you like. Achiko smiled and nodded. Thank you. Deku nodded, kissing her head as he stood up and grabbed the phone out of his pocket. He ordered their food before sitting on the couch and watching her come and curl up with him. He grinned, holding her close and sighing. Are we going to try tonight? He murmured. Do you want to? I have no idea if it would be fruitful. She murmured. Deku laughed at the ground. He felt a little bit bad, but wasn't particularly worried about Achiko's cycle. He was thinking more about the fact that he had not spent a night with his wife in months. He smiled at her softly and nodded. I'm ready if you are. He murmured, smiling at her and kissing her forehead. She kissed him. We can start tonight. She murmured. Deku grinned. After dinner? She shrugged. Whenever you want to do it, she murmured. I think we have time before the udon gets here. Deku nodded, pulling her into his lap. You sure you're ready? He murmured. Achiko nodded her head, kissing him softly, blushing as he furrowed his brows and leaned in closer, pulling her against him tightly. Plus. Deku smiled at Achiko, kissing her nose as he got out of bed and looked around the room. He watched her sit up, hoping he hadn't hurt her. He was always scared he had hurt her. He was so strong, and when he got excited, it was hard to rein himself in. He slipped his arms around her and kissed her nose. I love you, he murmured, kissing her neck before getting up and putting his clothes back on again. She sat up, looking at him and rubbing her eyes. Have somewhere you need to be? She murmured. He looked at her and smiled softly. I'm hungry. He admitted. I'm sorry, were you hungry? Achiko groaned, having difficulty sitting up. Deku frowned. Did I hurt you? I mean a little, but you have super strength. Comes with the territory. I liked it. She sighed, putting her own clothes on too. She put her hand on her back and stretched backwards before walking with him towards the door. Deku smiled sadly. I'm sorry, he sighed as he went and got the food, handing one of the boxes to her and sitting next to her on the couch, resting his head on her shoulder again before he started to eat. I love you, he murmured. His brain was spinning, thinking about what they had done, what they were hoping would come of it. He rested a hand on her flat stomach and smiled down at it. Achiko looked at his eyes and smiled back at him. I'm scared, he said softly, kissing her head. Me too, but I'm excited. Me too. He kissed her forehead. Maybe he could settle down, be a stay-at-home dad. It didn't sound like an awful way to live, but he knew he would feel guilty. With his quirk, it wasn't a decision he would take lightly. He rested his head on her shoulder. It was unlikely to happen on their first try. He probably had a year to think about all of this, so he enjoyed his food and held his wife in his arms. One thing this did mean was that he had to be alive in a year. Hopefully for 20 more years. Deku smiled sleepily as he woke up next to his wife and grinned, running his hand down her back. It had been so long since he woke up next to her. He kissed her head and grabbed his phone, skimming through all of the nonsense. He smiled when he saw a few messages from his friend Denki, wishing him luck with what he had done the night prior. Denki, congrats on the section. Denki, but seriously, you'll love being a dad. Deku glanced at Achiko. He supposed it made sense she would talk to Jiro about motherhood. She was the only one of their friends who had a child already, and Jiro would tell Denki about it. He wondered what all they had discussed. He texted back his thanks, before climbing out of bed and looking for something to eat. Deku, did not think I would see a text from you at 4 a.m. Did the baby make you wake up early? Denki, I haven't gone to bed yet. Deku laughed, looking at his feet and shaking his head. Deku, well, good morning. Denki, morning. Deku sighed, looking around his kitchen. He really didn't know where anything was located. He didn't know how to make himself breakfast in his own home. He eventually just poured himself a bowl of cereal and sat at the table with a sigh. He didn't like being in this house by himself. It didn't feel like home without Achiko sitting next to him. What an awful reality he had created, where he was more comfortable on the battlefield than in his kitchen, waiting for his wife to wake up. He grinned when he heard footsteps. Good morning. He called down the hall, as Achiko peeked down the hallway and waved. Good morning. Deku stood up, going to her and slipping his arms around her, kissing her forehead. How do you feel? Should I brew some tea, or are we cutting out caffeine because dash? He glanced down at her belly and then back at her eyes with a smile. Achiko smiled at him and sighed. We don't know if I'm pure tea, and even if I am, I think tea should be safe. Deku nodded. I know, I don't know how careful you want to be. Achiko smiled at him weakly, a bit uncomfortable about the way he was already gazing at her stomach, the way he was already protective of a child that was completely hypothetical. I just want to be supportive. Deku kissed her softly before hugging her, especially since, if they had been successful, he had no idea how much he would be able to come home and be supportive. He knew it would kill him to miss the doctor's appointments. He also knew he wouldn't be able to attend all of them. It was unlikely they had conceived. He told himself. It was the first try. He really didn't have to worry, but he was going to. He sighed, going to make her some tea. Do you want me to make you breakfast? Achiko shook her head. No, thank you. Tissa. Deku nodded. Morning sickness? Deku. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm excited. I don't want you to get your hopes up. Achiko sighed. Do you have to go to work today? I have a meeting with Kaken at 8 a.m., and then I was going to come home again. He smiled at her softly, kissing her head. I miss you. And I'm going to start trying to do something about it. The key word was trying. Achiko was quiet as she nodded and looked up at him. Okay, so we have 3 hours to kill. She murmured. Deku nodded, smiling at her and holding his arms out for her. I was hoping we could cuddle and talk, he murmured. Achiko nodded, climbing into his arms and smiling as he pulled her close. He kissed her nose and held her in his lap. So what's new, Curbs? Nothing. Really, I've been watching Denji for Jiro and Denki sometimes. He's adorable. Deku grinned. Yeah, Denki sent me this morning and said he knew we were trying. I asked Jiro how she did it. Chiko sighed. Deku nodded. How long have you been thinking about this? He asked. How many people had she talked to about wanting to be a mother before him? I don't know. Chiko sighed. I can tell when you lie, Achiko. About 1.5 years, she murmured, but I never see you, and I just didn't want to fight on the few nights I did see you. Deku frowned. 1.5 years? Yeah. That's a specific amount of time, Achiko. Yeah. Before Denki and Jiro had theirs. What made you start dash? Deku wanted to cry. He had heard rumors, but assumed they weren't true. Achiko would have told him if she lost his baby, and would have told him if she was PRGNT. I lost a PRGNCY. I was about 3 months along. I thought it was a boy. I was going to name him Kazuku. Deku buried his face in his hands. 3 months, and you didn't tell me? I couldn't make myself do it. I was so scared you would be upset and say something that would break my heart. I also suspected the PRGNCY might end in MSCR. Why? He whimpered. Why would you just assume that? Because I'm a pro hero, and I had no plans to slow down. But this time I am. I will slow down this time. Deku buried his face in his hands and tried to collect himself. He was angry, but mostly he was guilty. I don't know what to say to you, Achiko. I am heartbroken. So was I. I really wanted to meet him. I never thought you would keep a secret from me, let alone one this big. How many people knew? When I was PRGNT, Mina, Aoyama, Kirishima, Jiro, and Himiko. If Aoyama knew, everyone knew, and if Kirishima knew, Kaken definitely knew. Deku was in tears. He felt so betrayed. No one told me. You're number one hero, Deku. We didn't want to distract you. You're my wife. You lost our child and then just let all of our friends think I didn't care enough to console you. I was trying to save you from heartache. You're my wife. What's yours is mine. Achiko nodded sadly. What happened? He sighed. It just sort of happened. She sighed. I was putting on my uniform and I noticed something was off, went to the doctor and they had bad news. Deku nodded. Did you cry? Yes. I'm sorry you didn't feel safe coming to me. He whimpered. I love you, she whimpered. I won't keep anything else from you. He nodded, wishing he believed her. Thank you. He hugged her close and turned on the TV. He tried to keep his hands off of her belly in the hours leading up to his meeting with Bakugo. He held her close. Achiko kissed him softly and he kissed her back, just trying to be gentle with her. He felt like he should be mad at her, but he really just felt like a bad husband, and like he would be a bad father if he did ever get the chance to try. He was holding Achiko to his chest when he felt his phone vibrate. He smiled slightly. It's Tenya. Achiko nodded. Put him on speaker. Deku nodded. Hey Tenya. You're on speaker with Achiko. Me Midoriya, I am terribly sorry, but we need you to come to see me promptly. Mrs. Midoriya may come too if she would like. Achiko frowned. You sound terrified, Tenya, she murmured. To be frank, Midoriya, I am frightened. Please get here quickly. Where are you, Ida? Deku sighed. At the headquarters of my agency. Deku nodded. We'll be right there. He looked at Achiko and frowned. Going to get dressed in something besides his all-might pajamas? Achiko sighed. Putting on a pink sweater and some white pants with some white heels? Deku smiled. Putting on a yellow button-up and brown slacks and all-might sneakers. He smiled at her, kissing her head before leading her out to the car. He held her hand gently. He tried to think about Ida, but he was still wondering how he hadn't known his wife was PRGNT. How Kaken hadn't told him. He looked at her with a weak smile as he parked the car outside of Ingenium's agency. He looked at her for a long moment before sighing and getting out of the car. Achiko sighed, going to see Ida in his office. Mr. and Mrs. Midoriya, thank you for coming on such short notice. Yeah, of course, Tenya. What's wrong? Well, I assure you, I would not have interrupted your conjugal visit if it weren't important. Ida said, pulling a head out from under his desk. Achiko and Deku's eyes widened. Friend of yours? As a matter of fact he was. So, how long has he been under there? 55 minutes to be exact. Glad we are being exact. Do you often bring dismembered body parts to your office? Of course not. Of course not, Deku mumbled. What is going on? Achiko sighed. This man has been dead for 20 years. Do you often dig up your dead friends and bring them to your office? No, I do not. You need to start saying longer sentences. He was walking the streets, acting completely unlike himself. Unlike himself how? He was in a murderous rage. Achiko frowned. So like a zombie? I'm not sure. I just know this is not the first case of a dead man walking the streets of Hengoku. Deku frowned, unsure of what to say. He knew this was going to need his full attention for God knew how long. Are you okay, Tenya? To be frank, Deku, I may need a moment once you two leave. Deku nodded his head, slipping an arm around Achiko protectively. Of course, he murmured, looking at his watch. Why did you call us here? Because I am concerned for your safety. Tenya sighed as he looked at Achiko and then at Deku. You are my cherished friends. Deku hugged his wife close. He knew he would be flying for Hengoku later that day, and it made him want to cry. He so badly wanted to start this new chapter with his wife, but he supposed Japan just wasn't ready for that yet. Achiko sighed. We'll get to Hengoku as quickly as possible, she assured Ida. How badly is relief needed? It has not yet become urgent. In fact, it may be best to make up a reason you are there so as to not incite panic. The public does not yet know about this. Deku nodded, looking at his wife. There's a good IVF clinic there. We could tell people we're there to see them. Achiko nodded and sighed. Deku didn't know if he wanted Achiko coming with him. He preferred knowing she was home, safe, but he supposed if these were zombies, it would probably make it to their home soon enough. The safest bet was for her to be at his side. Deku was quiet as he watched Achiko put on her hero costume and warm clothes over it. He smiled softly to himself as he sighed. He was worried, so very, very worried, but he also trusted her. He would keep her safe. He always had. He always would. He sighed, slipping his arms around her and kissing her head. How do you feel? He murmured. Fine. She sighed as she felt him slip his arms around her and rest his chin on her head. What's wrong? She murmured. Deku sighed. My danger sense has been going off ever since we got to Tenya's office. Achiko sighed. Your danger sense has been useless since you were 17, Deku. You're probably having some PTSD. Maybe you should go to your meeting with Katsuki, and we can go to Hengoku in the morning. Deku nodded with a sigh. He wanted to go, right at that very moment, but he also knew that this would give him a night to think about how to best keep Achiko safe. He couldn't quit worrying that if he went to Hengoku with her, he would be coming home with a box. He wasn't about to explain to Mr. and Mrs. Uraraka why he, the #1 hero, couldn't keep their daughter safe. He looked at his phone. I do need to go though, he sighed, giving her another kiss and heading out the door. He frowned when he got there and Kaken didn't make a comment about him being late. He pet his head to the side. Hey, are you okay? Kirishima called me last night. Yeah. Deku frowned, unsure of how to respond to that. He wasn't doing well, Deku. Said he had to put his fist through Fat Gum's skull. Deku sighed, but dash. And that didn't even stop him. Tamaki had to finish him off. The dead are coming back, and they're very difficult to stop. Every day there are more and more reports of it. Deku looked horrified. Ida was telling me the same thing this morning. But it doesn't make sense. All of the people who we are talking about were cremated. I know. Bakugo sighed. I don't know. I don't know what is going on. I just know that I'm getting everyone I can over there as fast as possible. I know that you were hoping for some time with Cheeks, but I would like to try and stop this before it begins. Deku nodded. I understand. Achiko and I were planning on going as soon as we could. He sighed. He put his hands in his pockets. He knew that Bakugo wouldn't be pushing him if he wasn't desperate. Bakugo nodded. Great. He sighed. He looked guilty. Deku sighed, looking at his shoes as he put his hands in his pockets. I'm going right now, he sighed. I have to go home and get my wife and some other stuff. Bakugo nodded. Fair enough. He looked at Deku again. Kaminari said you were thinking about having a kid? Bakugo said softly, trying to force some sort of normal conversation. Deku sighed. Apparently Achiko told all of Japan she wanted a baby before she told me. Her husband. Bakugo sighed, shaking his head. He wasn't touching that. Huh, he sighed. Well, you'll be a great dad. Deku sighed, nodding his head. Thanks. He felt awkward. He watched Bakugo for a second longer. Did you need something? Bakugo sighed. He sounded annoyed. Deku shook his head and huffed. Bullshit. Spit it out. I have a plane to catch. Deku frowned. Achiko told me last night that she had a couple years ago. She never told me, but she told Kiri. Just rubs me the wrong way. That SCKS. but I fail to see what it has to do with me. If Kirishima knew dash. I heard she had one. I assumed it wasn't true, or that you didn't want to talk about it. Deku nodded sadly, wiping his eyes. Come on, Deku. You know no one told you because they thought you would blame yourself and spiral. Achiko lost something important and I didn't even get the chance to comfort her. You know what? I lost something and I didn't get to grieve. You wouldn't have anyways. I'm not saying it's right. But come on, Det. If you found out Achiko had a MSRD a year ago, you would have just tried to bury your feelings in work. You wouldn't have grieved and you wouldn't have comforted Achiko. Phew. You don't know that. You're right. I don't. But I'm pretty DMN sure. I have a plane to catch. Go fight with your FNG wife. This has nothing to do with me. Deku sighed, nodding. I'll see you when we get there. He sighed, looking at his feet before turning around and starting out the door. Bakugo sighed and shook his head. This could be the last time he spoke to Deku. Wait. Deku turned around, looking at him with a sigh as he wiped his eyes. I meant what I said. You'll be a great father. He wanted his last words to Deku to be positive. Deku wiped his eyes and nodded. I love you, Kaken. I love you, Deku. Deku nodded and left to go home to Achiko. Achiko was eating breakfast. Deku smiled, sitting next to her and watching. Feeling better? Yeah. She murmured. Deku sighed, kissing her head before looking at the table. Kaken wants me to Hengoku as quickly as possible. He sighed. Achiko nodded. Okay, I'm ready to go when you are, just let me clean up. Deku frowned. No, finish your breakfast. He sighed. There was a good chance this was the last bit of normalcy they would have for a while. He wanted to enjoy it. He watched her eat, humming softly as he ran his fingers through her hair. I love you. He sighed. He wanted to be upset with her, but he really couldn't bring himself to be. All he was thinking about was the possibility of losing her. If he lost her in this war against the dead, he wasn't sure if he could keep going. Achiko finished her food, washing her dishes and putting them in the dishwasher. She smiled, giving her husband a gentle kiss. Ready, she murmured. Deku nodded. Okay. Great. He was hesitant. He wanted her to stay home, but he supposed if she was close to him, he could keep her safe. He also knew he wasn't going to convince her to stay back. He looked at her and sighed, pulling her close and huffing. I love you, he whispered, so much. More than I can ever tell you, more than I can show you. His voice was tired, breaking. Achiko sighed. I love you too. What's wrong? Deku shook his head. Just. It makes me really sad you didn't tell me about what happened because you thought I was too busy. It may not always seem like it, but you are what matters most to me, and in knowing you just went through that alone. Because you didn't think I had time to deal with it really hurts. You don't grieve in the healthiest way, Deku. I knew you would just start working more, I would see you less, I was also worried you would blame me. Tell me I wasn't careful. Enough. You think I'm a monster. Deku sighed. I don't think you're a monster, I blamed myself. I should have been more careful. I was ashamed. Deku sighed. There was no reason for that though, it most likely had nothing to do with anything you did. If you had told me when it happened, I could have told you that. Deku felt awful. He stared at her sadly. It wouldn't have made a difference, Deku. I would have seen how much it hurt you, and it would have made me feel worse. I know it was selfish, but I just couldn't be the one who made you crumble again. Deku's chest ached. He wanted to fall to his knees and cry, but he didn't let himself. I would have You would have blamed yourself. I couldn't let you do that. Well, I'm doing it now. Deku whimpered. Achiko sighed, shaking her head as she kissed between his eyes. It was a long time ago. Not to me. We need to get going, we can talk about it on the drive. Deku nodded his head, sighing softly before hugging her close, resting his head on top of hers and sighing softly, just holding her close for a long moment. He sighed softly, rubbing her back gently and huffing. Achiko sighed softly as she let him hold her, closing her eyes and smiling. Deku pulled away after a long while and Achiko smiled at him and kissed him softly. He kissed her back and rubbed her back. Car. He sighed, going to get inside of the car that Okako had filled with snacks and everything they would need. He smiled at her softly, running his fingers through her hair. She would be such a good mother. He kissed her head with a sigh, if only she had better taste in men. He ran his fingers through her hair and huffed. Ready? As I'll ever be. Chiko sighed. Deku nodded, beginning to drive. The drive was a couple hours, and Deku tried his best to cherish them. He was terrified they would be the last normal moments he ever got with her. He hoped they would get to go home from this and start their family, but he had this sinking feeling that his home life would never be the same again. When they got there he called Bakugo, frowning. Hey, Achiko and I are here. Tenya told us to keep a low profile. We were going to pretend to be here for the FRTLTY clinic. Is there a place you want to meet us? No. Bakugo sighed. He was spending some time with Kirishima, trying to calm him down a little bit. Just check into your hotel with Cheeks. We'll all meet up tonight. Deku nodded. Okay. He smiled over at Achiko, sighing. He said to check into the hotel, and we'll meet up tonight, he sighed. Achiko nodded. Sounds good. Deku sighed softly as he ran a hand through Achiko's hair and hummed to himself. Her head was in his lap. They were in a hotel room, and Deku was thinking about the future. Not just the possibility of a baby, but also just general stuff about his life and his relationship with Achiko. He wondered if Achiko felt safe with him. She didn't seem to, which was heartbreaking. All the things she had said in past fights were ringing in his head. That he wasn't hers, he belonged to Japan, that he didn't know her. That he loved a woman who didn't exist, a woman who never had. He wondered if it was still true to her, because the only way her hiding something as big as a PR Jin and CY from him for 3 months was if she still believed he was some robot who went off to battle, some cold unfeeling machine who just saw her as a sec trophy. He sighed, resting his head against the headboard of their bed. What are you thinking about? Achiko murmured, looking up at him with a frown. You were going to name him Kazuku? He murmured. Achiko looked sad, nodding her head once. Deku frowned. I wish he was here. He sighed. He would have been a toddler. Deku could have been coming home to a toddler, hugging his knees. The thought brought tears to his eyes. He hadn't let himself think about it enough to want it, but now he did. He wanted to save his marriage. He wanted to have little ones to come home to. He just wasn't sure how to get Achiko to open up to him again. He thought he had known her so well. No, he had thought he had known her well. There was no way she had been faking it since high school. Right? When did we grow apart? He sighed sadly. What do you mean? I feel like I don't know you anymore, Curbs. When did it happen? I don't know. It was gradual. You went off to war again and again. I swallowed my emotions again and again, because it was you. That had always been part of the deal. I don't know why I ever thought it would go away. I clung more and more to stability and less to you. I'm stable. How? You're my rock, Achiko. I always assumed I was yours, he whimpered. I'm sorry, she murmured. I always come home. Until one day you don't. Achiko whimpered. Deku sighed, shaking his head and hugging himself. Why did you ask for a baby then? Achiko looked at her toes. Because I want one. She murmured. And I think you would be a good dad. As long as I keep coming home. Deku sighed, looking at her and getting out of bed. He was devastated. He couldn't promise Achiko he would always come home, and he supposed he of all people should know why that meant he shouldn't have a kid, but the thought of one made him so happy. He was being irresponsible. He thought about Koda, how badly it had hurt him when his parents died, how hard it had been for him to understand their sacrifice. He thought about his own childhood, growing up without a dad, how hard it was for his mom. He had been so caught in the euphoria of the afterglow, he hadn't thought about how selfish he was being. He looked at her sadly, but he really did want it. The day he spent researching, he had gotten so excited, and this day, thinking about what could have been, Deku was having a hard time convincing himself that he couldn't be a dad, but he couldn't say for sure he could either. He thought about Nana Shimura, and his blood ran cold. Dabi, Shigaraki, Koda, all different tragic stories, and all what happens when pro-heroes have children or grandchildren. He heard Achiko talking, but he didn't hear what she was saying. He was sad. He wanted to be her husband, but really she was just another victim of his, wasn't she? covered in bruises and scars. He had never laid a hand on her, but how many villains had targeted her because she was his wife? How many scars did she have, because someone wanted to hurt him? How many scars did she have because of him? What would happen to any child of his? He couldn't protect Achiko, a pro-hero. How could he protect something as vulnerable as a child? But for some reason he wanted so desperately to try. I love you. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it all. Just give me a chance. I'm not going anywhere, she murmured. Deku nodded his head, climbing back into the bed and holding her gently against him. He ran a hand through her hair before kissing her deeply. She kissed back, holding him close before looking at him with a slight frown. What are you doing? She murmured. Might be the last chance we have for a while, he said breathlessly. Do you want to? Are you okay? Achiko said softly. Deku cupped her face gently. I want to do this with you. I want a family with you. He murmured. Lots of pro-heroes had failed at parenthood, but none of them had Achiko. Achiko nodded, but she pulled away from him, hugging her knees gently. What were you just doing? In your head? What were you doing? Deku frowned. I was thinking a lot. But when I grabbed onto you it stopped and I was calm, he said softly. Achiko sighed sadly. I'm just. She shook her head and hugged her knees to her chest. Deku smiled at her softly, gently pushing her chin with a finger. Hey. Hi, she murmured, eyes on his as she watched him sigh. What did I say? Nothing. That. You just startled me a little. It's hard to keep up with all these conversations you have with yourself. Deku nodded sadly, looking at her with a sad smile. I was trying to decide if I was being selfish, he murmured, but I really do want a family with you. Achiko nodded, looking at Deku again, until he changed his mind again. She shook her head. Are you sure? As sure as I can be. Achiko, I spent an entire day looking into FRTLTY clinics, all the different ways we could do it, pros and cons of all of the ways. I want to do this with you. Okay. Achiko murmured, looking at him with a sigh, kissing him gently. Deku hugged her against his chest gently. I love you, Achiko. He looked down at her. What now? Do you still want to make love? A smile came to Deku's lips. He nodded, kissing her deeply. As Deku laid next to Achiko, he looked at her body. She really did have a lot of scars. Achiko looked up at him, self-conscious. What? She murmured. And nothing, why you're just so beautiful. He was looking at the scars. How many of these were from villains who attacked her because of him? How many of them were from him, not knowing how to rein in his super strength when he got excited? He got asked a lot, why his wife had black eyes, bruises, broken bones. She was a pro-hero, of course she got hurt. He had always gotten so angry with those questions, but really, how many of those injuries was he responsible for? Achiko climbed out of bed, putting on her hero costume, and then jeans and a pink sweater over the top of it. Deku pet his head to the side. Hero costume? Yeah. The dead are walking the streets, Deku. Deku sighed, supposing that was fair. He put on his own hero costume, pulling on some jeans and a hoodie over the top. He sighed, slipping his arms around her and kissing her head. Kaken said we could meet at this place across from the IVF place we used as our cover. Says it has good calamari. Achiko nodded, hugging him gently. Who are we meeting exactly? I'm not sure. Kaken said he wasn't sure who would be able to make it immediately. Achiko nodded. Should I shower? Just brush your hair and I think it's fine. He smiled at her softly. We're both sweaty, but I think everyone's too shaken up to care. She nodded. Deku rubbed her back, closing his eyes, praying silently that he would be going home, hand in hand with his wife, soon. I love you, he whispered. Promise me you know that? I love you. Achiko murmured, and Deku sighed, as he felt a pang in his heart. She didn't answer his question. Deku was quiet as he held her for a second longer before she pulled away, looking at her with a sigh as he watched her put on her shoes. Why are you looking at me like that? You know I love you, don't you? Yes. That. I know you love me. Her eyes met his, and she shook her head with a huff. I don't know, it's complicated. It's really not, Achiko. It's not complicated at all. Deku, I can't keep up with these conversations you have with yourself. Okay? I'm really just confused as to what has been going on with you all day. I know you love me. I do. Then why didn't you say anything? Why did you say it was complicated? Because Deku, this is the most time we've spent together in months. Because I know you love the girl you met in high school, but I don't know if you would love the woman she's grown into. I don't think you know me, and I'm not sure how well I know you. Her voice was soft. Then why are we together, Achiko? Why are we trying to start a family? Why are we still married? Because I love you too. She sighed, and I want to salvage this. I do. I love you so much, Deku. Talking about what we've been talking about today, it's hard to talk about with someone I didn't see at all when I was going through it. Deku nodded, his hands cupping her cheek as he shook his head. I'm sorry, he whispered. I could not be more sorry I wasn't there. I will try so hard to get better. Please believe me, please. Achiko forced a smile, nodding her head. Okay. She murmured, pressing her forehead to his and kissing him gently. I know you will, I'm not going anywhere. But I think we might need to wait to have a baby. Deku frowned. Okay. How long? I don't know. She murmured. Until our marriage is in a better place. Deku nodded. He was a bit disappointed, but it was probably for the best. His eyes rested on her midsection and he sighed. If you don't want a baby right now, we should probably, considering what we've been doing, we should probably dash. Achiko nodded. It should be safe today. I did some math. Deku nodded his head. Okay. He sighed, hugging her and kissing her head again. Should we go? Ready if you are. Deku and Achiko were quiet as they drove to the restaurant together. Deku reached out, grabbing her hand gently and giving it a squeeze. Our cover story is that we're here for the IVF facility. Do you want to change it since you don't want a baby anymore? Achiko shrugged, looking at her knees. I still want a baby, just not right now. I think we should have more of a plan before we start trying. A small smile came to Deku's lips as he nodded, squeezing her hand again. Maybe when we get home from this mess we can talk about it. With all the thinking he had done about it, he had gotten pretty excited at the prospect of a little one. I'll take a couple weeks off, and we can talk about it. Please. Achiko nodded her head. If you want. She murmured. She was pretty sure he would forget as soon as he was with his team. He was acting weird. He usually didn't seem to care about the domestic part of his life. Seeing him fixate on it made her uncomfortable. It made her feel like a bad person. She had thought for so long that she wanted this, but now that she had it, it felt wrong. Deku nodded, looking at her and smiling sadly, parking the car and pecking her lips. What's wrong? She murmured. Nothing. No. What's wrong? I am worried you're going to ask me for a divorce when we get home. He sighed if they got to go home together. I don't plan to, she murmured, but I won't promise you that this mission is going to end with us having a baby and renewing our vows. Deku nodded sadly, swallowing hard. Great. A mission where his one source of stability, the thread he was hanging from, was threatening to snap. He stared at her sadly. He didn't drink, but tonight he really wanted to. I love you. She said. I love you. Deku sighed, getting out of the car and going to open the door for her. Achiko climbed out of the car and kissed his forehead gently. Deku smiled sadly, slipping an arm around her and walking with her to where her friends were sitting. Achiko wasn't at his side for long. Deku watched her go to greet Mina and Tsu, making a round, saying hello to everyone, all smiles, giggling. Why couldn't he make her that happy? He forced a smile when Kirishima came up to him. Hey man. How are ya? Deku smiled at him weakly. He saw how tense he was, how forced his tone was, and he wanted to take him somewhere else, where they could just cry together. All Deku wanted to do was cry, but he knew it wasn't the place, it wasn't the time. He said, I'm fine. How are you? I'm doing great, man. How long has it been since all of us were together? Too long. Deku nodded, hands balling into fists at his side. Kirishima patted Deku's back before leaving to go talk to Mina, who was talking to Achiko. She had such a pretty smile, he wished he got to see it more. He forced another smile when Bakugo approached him. I can talk now if you need to. Bakugo sighed. Deku shook his head. You sure? You're looking at her like you're waiting for her to get sniped or something. Deku hesitated, but he sighed. It's nothing, he whimpered, just feeling this impending sense of doom every time I look at her. Which makes me think I'm losing her on this mission. Deku felt the tears begin to fall. High danger sense has been dash. Useless since you developed PTSD. But it's not about my safety. It's about hers. She's one of the top 10 heroes in Japan, Deku. She can take care of herself. I know she can, he whimpered. I know that, but I still worry. I know you do, he sighed. I'm just telling you, you don't need to. Everyone is here but earphone jack because of the baby. We don't get to see everyone very often. I say you just enjoy this, because tomorrow, things are going to get more serious. Deku nodded. But I shouldn't worry about my wife? She's doing her job, Deku. I'm not saying not to worry. You think I'm not worried about Kiri? I'm telling you she's going to be okay. Deku nodded. Kirishima is going to be okay too. DMN right he is. Deku smiled weakly, sighing. He felt a little bit sad as she saw Mina and Achiko giggling. Mina touched Achiko's belly and smiled at her softly, but he could see she was getting uncomfortable, so he sighed. I should go save my wife. What's going on? Just Mina is touching her belly and I think she's uncomfortable because we decided to put the baby talk on hold for a while. Bakugo frowned. I'm sorry to hear that, but it's probably for the best until those demon extras are 6 feet under. Deku nodded. Bakugo could tell that Deku was upset, but he really didn't need to be involved in Deku's marriage. He knew Deku would be a great father, but he could also see why Achiko wanted to wait. You two will figure it out. Bakugo sighed. If Kirishima hid something like that from you, would you be, how would you deal with it? I don't know, Deku. Clearly you and Cheeks have some work to do on your marriage. I cannot be a part of that. He would be devastated, like he was sure Deku was, but he also couldn't be in the middle of this. The issue was that Deku and Achiko were talking to everyone about their qualms but each other. Deku sighed, but he nodded, going and wrapping an arm around Achiko and looking at Mina with a weak smile. Hi Mina. He said softly, what are we talking about? Achiko's smile looked a bit strained. We're just talking about baby Denji, and how cute he is. And you and I, and how we've decided to start trying. Deku nodded his head. Yep. Secret's out. I'm so excited. He was stiff, this was really hard. He looked at Achiko and kissed her head. Achiko nodded, her eyes met his and she cupped his face in her hands. A genuine smile came to his lips as he leaned down and kissed her. Mina frowned. You two are acting weird, she sighed. Are you okay? We're fine. Achiko murmured, just upset about what's going on here, and obviously we can't really have a baby until all of this is over. Mina nodded, I guess. Deku held Achiko close and ran his hands through her hair, trying to think of a convincing lie. Well, we've been trying for a couple of years now, and after what happened a year and a half ago, we're just a little bit discouraged. Mina frowned. Deku knew she probably didn't buy it, but Achiko nodded her head as Deku kissed the top of her head. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm sure it will happen though. You two deserve nice things. Deku nodded with a sigh. Yeah. We hope so. He held Achiko's shoulders gently and sighed, pulling her to his chest. So you knew about the issue, but didn't come home to see your wife? Deku looked at Mina and felt tears coming to his eyes. Achiko frowned. Deku didn't. He never knew I was P-Argent. He was just lying for reasons I am not sure about. Because I assume you don't want the public to think that you knew your wife had a MC and didn't go to comfort her. Deku frowned. You're right. You're right. I don't. He found out I had a MC a year and a half ago last night, and he's having trouble with it. Deku nodded, wiping his eyes. I would have had a toddler. I need a little bit of time to process. Mina frowned. This is why I told you to tell him when it happened. He needs to grieve just as much as you did. Achiko sighed. I was hoping he wouldn't need to find out, and he wouldn't need to grieve. Mina sighed, looking at her feet. She remembered comforting Achiko through it. She had been a mess, and she had been so mad at Deku for not coming home to help, and when she found out Deku hadn't known, she had been upset for different reasons. The way that Deku was behaving now, it was how she assumed Deku would be if he found out, depressed, needy, protective. It wasn't the way they needed the number one hero to be when the dead started to wake up. Achiko sighed as Deku kissed her head, holding her firmly. Achiko smiled at her weakly. Mina smiled weakly. Are you too hungry? I think the restaurant is probably going to be impatient if we all just hang around in the parking lot and don't order soon. Achiko and Deku both nodded, looking over to see Tamaki and Mirio were ordering food. Deku sighed. Is your stomach feeling better? Deku murmured. Achiko nodded. I should eat something. She murmured, looking at Deku with a soft smile. Mina frowned slightly, ping her head to the side. Stomach bug. Just nerves, I think. Achiko laughed. I hope you feel better soon, she murmured, because if it was more than a stomach bug, Deku wouldn't be in the right headspace for quite a while. Deku grabbed his wife's hand and led her to the counter where she ordered soup and he ordered calamari. Deku was worried about her, but he didn't want her to go home until he knew what was going on. He also knew he shouldn't send her home because of a flu. He was probably just paranoid because of all the talk about babies these past couple days. Deku smiled as he waved at Tsu. I heard you were kicking butt in Mexico. Happy to see you here. Tsu nodded, looking at him with a sigh. Of course I'm here to support my friend. Deku nodded, knowing she wasn't talking about his cover story, but he thanked her anyway for his cover. He knew people probably wouldn't buy that all of these people came here to support their friends in their pursuit of parenthood, but it was the story they had. He knew he should probably prepare for a story about wanting a baby, how long he had wanted one, why he picked this facility. He would talk about it at the hotel with Achiko that night. You still seeing Joaquin? Tsu nodded. I am. Achiko grinned. You can show him if you want. Tsu smiled, pulling a ring out of her pockets. Deku beamed. Congratulations, Tsu. He was actually really excited. Nothing made him happier than when good things happened to his friends. Tsu sighed. I was hoping to tell everyone tonight, but with the number of people who are upset, I didn't think it was the time. Deku shook his head. Nonsense. We can all use some good news right now. Tsu smiled. Well, thanks Izuku. I already asked your wife to be my maid of honor, so I hope you can put some time aside to come to Mexico City. Deku smiled at her and nodded. Of course I can. He was a little worried about it, but he told himself he would make it. He had to. Tsu smiled and looked at Achiko, who gave her a hug. I am so happy, Tsu. I cannot wait to meet him. Achiko grinned, and Deku could see she was actually happy. He wondered if Tsu knew that she had turned their entire night around. He took their food and sat down to eat with his wife. He hoped he would get more good news before the night was over. Deku was quiet as he slipped into bed next to his wife, slipping his arms around her and holding her. He always got a little nervous, sharing a bed with her, scared he would have a nightmare and break her skull, but he also had never hurt her because of a nightmare before, so he figured it was fine. It was far from the time to start being less affectionate with his wife. He looked into her eyes as he fell asleep. He told himself that everyone else was right, that this was just another mission, that his danger sense was worthless and he was being paranoid. He really should have listened to his gut. Deku stared blankly at Kaken as he debriefed him on what he had seen. A necromancing cat girl? That's what I saw. Deku groaned. She was creating them from nothing too. I have no idea what is going on or how she's doing it. So you have no ideas for how to do counterattacks? No, I dash. Bakugo cursed, punching the table beneath himself. 2 months. They had been stuck in this town for over 2 months, fighting dead loved ones, and watching the city burn around them. Mass hysteria had struck less than a week after the heroes came to their town. People had bought into Deku's story about IVF for a while, but once the heroes were in town, whatever force was at the center of the hordes kicked into full gear. Waves of ghosts walking the streets, orphaned children following their parents to their own demise, civilians forced to disarm their loved ones until heroes could get to their side. Bakugo was terrified that if things didn't turn around soon, they may need to begin asking for help in less than ideal places. He pushed the thought away from his head. No more child soldiers. Not while he was standing. Deku looked at him sadly. I'm sorry. I want this sheet to be over just as much as you do. I'm terrified. I couldn't get a close enough look. Deku had wanted to get closer, to try harder, but he hadn't been able to get his body to move. He felt like an imposter, the #1 hero, incapable of making the sacrifice play. He tried to go forward, and he thought about Achiko, the promises he had made to her. Was it okay for him to prioritize getting home to Achiko over the well-being of Japan? The whole reason he had gotten One for All was because he was willing to sacrifice himself, and now here he was, refusing to risk getting hurt because he wanted to go home and play house with his wife who had seemingly fallen out of love with him. Bakugo sighed. I know. I'm glad to see you in one piece. He nodded his head. You were gone for so long, we were beginning to worry. It took a couple of weeks to follow one of them back to her, he sighed. I was being cautious. I understand. Bakugo sighed. I assume that's all you have. Deku nodded once. How is Kiri? He's fine. Worried about Cheeks. Deku's heart sank. Bakugo sighed. I don't know. Guess she's been sick or something. Probably nothing. He gets his information from Ishido, and you know how she gets when she's bored. Bakugo rolled his eyes. Nodded once, but that didn't aid his concern. I should probably go to check on her. Yeah. I think we're done here. Bakugo sighed. Deku stood up and sighed. Thank you, Kaken. Bakugo sighed, nodding his head once. Thank you, Izuku. Deku smiled at him, nodding his head once before excusing himself to go see his wife. Achiko was in their shelter, crying as Mina rubbed her side. It's okay. Everything is dash. She saw Deku and a frown came to her lips. Achiko screamed, shaking her head. Deku had been gone for weeks, and they had assumed the worst. She could fight a lot of ghosts, and she had, but she knew she wasn't ready to fight him. Deku heard her scream and was at her side at a speed that rivaled that of light. Achiko! He whimpered, starting to cry himself. She wrapped her arms around him, and they cried together. Deku wiped her eyes. What's this I hear about you being sick? He whispered, a hand gently moving to caress her face. I think I have the flu, she murmured. Deku frowned, glancing at Mina who was shaking her head. Did you think it's something more? Deku's heart was racing. Mina sighed, looking at her feet. If it was what she suspected it was, it would probably be better if Deku and Achiko remained in denial until they fixed this, but she also knew that it would be cruel not to say anything. If Achiko was P-Arginin-T, they deserved to know so that they could decide how to go forward. It might just be your cover story, but I think there might be a little hero in there. Deku pet his head to the side. His cover story? All of that had been so long ago. It took him a second to put together what she was talking about. Achiko shook her head. There's no way. Achiko murmured, we haven't been together since the start of all of this. Deku realized what they were talking about, and his stomach did a flip. Have you? No, but it's really not that late, and I've been stressed, and I haven't been eating. Deku sighed, burying his face in his hands. No, he could not deal with this right now. I think we should take a test. You can take a test. I'm not P-Arginin-T. Deku groaned, please. If it's negative then you can rub it in my face, but I need to know otherwise I'm not going to be able to think about anything else. Mina sighed, I think you should do it, girl. I will sit with you, and be there, and we can talk about everything, but I really do think Deku's right. Achiko nodded sadly, looking at Deku and sighing. Deku looked at her and forced a smile. Let's go. He kissed her between her eyes and led her out of the shelter, looking both ways as he cautiously led her down the street. Deku wanted to throw up. He was shaking all over. They got to a little store pretty quickly. Deku suspected that he had been seen by the leader of the horde, meaning she would likely take a step back to move the location she was striking from. If he had been seen, it could also cause her to prepare something awful. He wasn't sure how she was doing what she was doing, which made him think her quirk may not be limited to raising the dead. His head was in a delicate place. It would be easy for her to F with him. He held Achiko against his side as he stepped through the door of a store. He smiled politely at the employee. He supposed he probably didn't need to smile at the holographic cashier, but courtesy was something that he didn't know how to turn off. Achiko looked at the tests pensively. Deku shifted his weight impatiently. We'll grab a few. These things are like 90% accurate. W will be able to figure it out. Achiko frowned. I just dash. We really need to get back to base as fast as possible. And I need to know yesterday. Deku was trembling, Achiko frowned, huffing as she grabbed a few tests. Deku sighed. Thank you, he murmured. I'm sorry, I'm just so worried about you. It's fine, Deku. You're right. Let's just get out of here. She smiled at the cashier as she handed him the tests. It occurred to her that it was not a good idea for them to do this in person. Thought the story about you two wanting a kid was to cover stuff up. Guess we were just lucky hell happened to break loose when the #1 hero was here. Deku smiled sadly. Lucky is not the word I would use. Are you an actual cashier? I assumed you were some sort of AI. He paid for the test. I'm from another town, but yes, I'm a real person. You actually seem to have really helped. Thank you, he sighed. Just doing my job. Deku looked at Achiko and gestured with his head out the door. Achiko nodded, following him, waving to the cashier as they left. Deku got them back to the base quickly, not wanting people to see what they were carrying, hoping the cashier would be discreet, but doubting it. It was fine. The media was the least of his concerns right now. He got to the base. Mina followed them to their quarters. Deku handed her the first test, and she frowned. What? I don't have to pee. Mina sighed, going to get her some water. You're not supposed to drink water because dash. We have 3 tests. Deku replied, if one of them is skewed because you drank too much water before you took it, we will notice. Achiko frowned, hugging herself sadly. Deku looked at her sadly. He knew she was scared, and that she didn't want to be P-Arjun in tea, and if she didn't know, she wouldn't have to deal with it. He considered telling her that they could wait until the next day, but he really didn't think his brain could handle that. Chaco, he murmured, it's going to be okay, we'll figure it out. Achiko looked at him and shook her head. Everything is fine. Deku sighed, moving to hug her. She let him, and he held her for a long moment. You look uncomfortable, he murmured. Am I squeezing you too hard again? No, she murmured. I need to pee. She tucked her hair behind her ear and frowned. Deku noted that she looked guilty. She had needed to pee for a while. Achiko. Not knowing doesn't make you any less P-Arjun in tea. If you are P-Arjun in tea, we need to figure out how to keep you and the baby safe and healthy. Get you somewhere with a special doctor for babies and prenatal vitamins. Somewhere without Deku. Where Deku had no way to see how she and his baby were doing, he was worried about missing some of the doctor's appointments. Now he was looking at the real possibility he would miss them all. Please take the test. Achiko nodded her head, grabbing a test from him and going to the bathroom. Deku sat outside the door. Mina came back with water, before putting it down and sitting down next to him. When 30 minutes passed, and Achiko didn't come out, Deku suspected he knew why. He heard her sobbing on the other side of the door, and he wanted more than anything to comfort her, but he knew not to barge in on her. He felt wounded, hugging his knees to his chest as he tried to keep his tears at bay, but they came anyway. He didn't know what to do and he was terrified. Mina stood up. Sweetie, we're beginning to worry. Can you come out here so we can talk? The door opened and Deku jumped to his feet, wrapping his arms around her. Everything is going to be okay. We're going to get you somewhere where you can be safe and have our baby and you're going to be safe and healthy and our baby is going to be safe and healthy. But you won't be there. She whimpered, for any of it. You won't be there. And no. But you'll be safe and the baby will be safe and I'll get to come home to you both. Achiko cried into his shoulder and he began to cry too. Mina watched, unsure as to what to say. She was trying to think of a way that Achiko could get out. Everything was down, there was no way out of this city. Didiki, you're not going to miss a thing. Mina said, trying to sound cheerful. Achiko can't really go anywhere. Deku was a little bit timid as he went to meet with Kaken, sitting next to him and avoiding his gaze. Bakugo frowned when he saw him. He looked small, his shoulders leaning inward, and his head slumped down. He looked defeated, and like he hadn't slept. He hoped he had spent the night fighting with Achiko, that it wasn't the thing that had been circulating the base for about a month now. You okay? Deku sat up with a forced smile. Yeah. I actually got some good news last night, Kaken. Bakugo's heart sank. He knew that Deku wouldn't neglect his duties as a hero, but he was going to feel like shit about not being with his wife, so he was going to get to listen to him cry and talk about his marriage even more, and now he had to worry about Cheeks and her health and her baby's health. Well, you look like shit. Deku looked like he wanted to be angry, but he was too tired to bother. Thanks, Kaken. He sighed. You know, you don't exactly look great either. Bakugo shrugged. So, you're going to be a dad. He said it, and watched Deku's shoulders slump even more. Good news. Seemed like it. Deku looked up at him. He was going to say something, but he shook his head. Spit it out. No. Deku replied, no, I can't. Fine. You're about to have a kid. What does that mean as far as hero work goes? Deku looked at him sadly before his face disappeared in his hands again. Nothing. He whimpered. He wanted it to change things. It was something that should change everything, but it really didn't. If Deku wanted his wife and his baby to go home safely, he couldn't be with them. He couldn't be with Achiko for what could, very possibly, be the last months she was alive. Bakugo didn't hear what he said, as he was crying into his hands. What was that? Deku took his head out of his hands, glaring at him. I said nothing. It doesn't change effing anything, Kaken. Achiko is going to be a mother, but let's be effing honest, I'm not going to be a dad. I'm not going to see her any more than I do now. Our kid won't know me any better than my Ife fans I never meet, and I won't know him any better than I know them. I want it to change everything, but it won't, Kaken. I'll still be doing hero work until the day my FING child gets old enough to realize what a terrible father I am, becomes a villain, and I have to FING kill them. And that's the best case FNG scenario, Kaken. Achiko could also FING die. My baby could also FING die. Huh. Yeah. Deku whimpered. Well, nothing we can do about it now. Deku sobbed into his hands. I should have known. I should have known this would happen to me. Of course I can't have a baby. Why did I ever think that was a possibility for me? Well, you're going to have a baby, whether you're ready or not. Bakugo replied, and after this sheet is over, I'm sure that there are ways we can make sure you have time with your family. Deku just kept crying. He was not okay, and he couldn't talk about it with Achiko. She was scared enough already. You told your mom yet? No. You plan to? As soon as I can. Why? She's going to be happy. Deku nodded sadly. That was a small comfort, but it was a comfort all the same. He looked at Bakugo sadly. I want to be happy. I should be happy, but all I can do is worry. I keep thinking about solutions, like this baby is a complication, instead of a blessing. Something that I decided to do. What kind of father am I going to be? A father who is going to think about everything that could possibly go wrong and prepare for it. A father who loves his child and worries about them the second he knows they're coming. You're going to be a great dad, Izuku. You don't have to worry about that. Deku frowned. But I do. I do. He whimpered. I'm not worried about the baby. I'm worried about my wife, and even then I'm not sure if I'm worried about my wife because I love her, or if I'm just scared to raise a kid alone. He whimpered. I'm scared I won't even care about the kid, and Achiko will die and I'll grow to hate it, or Achiko will be its sole caregiver and it will grow to hate me for never being around. I can't be Endeavor. I can't be Nana. I can't fight my kid. If it looks anything like Achiko, I'll just give up immediately. He whimpered. And thinking about Achiko struggling, like my mom struggled, raising a kid alone. It breaks my heart, Kaken. Deku started to cry again, and I'm calling my baby like there's some sort of effing item. I keep thinking about them like a problem and not a miracle. And I feel so effing guilty. So you've done all that thinking, but you don't think you care enough? Deku, you've known about the kid for what? 10 hours? And you've already thought about everything you could possibly do wrong and things to do about the situations. The problem isn't that you don't care. What is the problem then? That you knocked your hag up just before the apocalypse. Don't call her that. Deku sighed. And that's nice, but it doesn't solve shit. There isn't a solution. Bakugo replied with a shrug. But, you're crazy if you think you're going to turn into Endeavor. Nana. Look, once the sheet is over, I will make sure you get time with your brat. Okay? I'm not dealing with another Shigaraki. Deku nodded. It was nice, but he didn't think it would solve anything. Thank you, Kaken, he sighed. You tell Icy Hot? Not yet, he replied. We told Ochiko's friends last night because she needed comfort. I wanted to tell you first, he murmured. Bakugo sighed. It's been circulating for months. Shoto is probably the only one who will be surprised. Deku smiled softly with a nod. Bakugo smiled. It was nice to see Deku relax a little. You're going to be a great dad, he sighed. We just need to get out of here. Deku nodded once. Thank you, Kaken. He sighed, a sad smile coming to his lips. She wants to name the baby after me. Kazuku. Bakugo laughed with a shake of his head. Poor kid. I think it's nice. Deku murmured, and she really likes it. It's fine. Deku frowned. It means peacekeeper. It's a nice name. Ochiko frowned as she put her hand on her belly, staring at it. She knew she wasn't showing, but her suit only zipped part of the way up, water retention. She had started wearing regular shirts and yoga pants so that she could be comfortable, and now she supposed she wouldn't be doing any hero work for a while, so she could just relax. But obviously she couldn't quit worrying about her baby. She had spent so much time not eating. What if she had already hurt him? All she wanted was for him to be safe and healthy. She sighed. It was bad timing, but she was a little bit excited. She could also tell that all of Deku's smiles were forged, and she didn't blame him. He was in a tough spot. She felt bad, but she also knew it wasn't entirely her fault. She hated herself for stressing him out even more. He was already dealing with the apocalypse. Now he had to deal with her P'Argent CY too. She sighed. She loved him so much, and she just wanted to make his life better, but she kept making it worse. She sighed, realizing she was crying, wiping her eyes as she hugged herself close. I'm sorry if you're a girl, Kaz. I just think you're a boy, but I guess I won't really know until we meet. I'll love you the same either way. I promise. She sighed. And your daddy will love you no matter what too. I already know he's going to be your favorite, and I don't blame you. He's amazing. She frowned when she saw Deku again. I'm sorry. Deku was crying too. He slipped his arms around her, nuzzling her as he rubbed her back. I love you so much, he whimpered, holding her close. He had been worried that she didn't love him anymore and that she resented him, but was staying with him because she was scared to be alone. Ochiko. Oh, Ochiko, you're going to be the greatest mom of all time. Our kid would be insane if I was their favorite parent. Ochiko smiled at him sadly. Are you feeling better then? Deku sighed. I don't know, it goes up and down, but I love you, and I'm sure that once everything goes back to normal, we'll be okay. We should tell Ida. Ochiko murmured. He got back from his stakeout today. He's meeting with Bakugo right now, but he should know. We have to tell him and Shoto. Deku murmured, smiling at her softly. I think everyone knows except Tenya. Nijire has touched my belly 3 times today. Shoto isn't going to believe it unless one of us tells him ourselves. Deku sighed. How did Bakugo take the news? He actually made me feel a lot better, he murmured, holding her hands and sighing. I'm going to do my best for you too, he murmured. She nodded, looking at him with a smile. Can we talk about what you saw on your last mission? She murmured. Deku nodded sadly, looking at his toes and sighing. I saw a cat girl, he murmured. She was creating them out of nothing, and it didn't seem to take anything out of her at all. I don't know what her quirk is or how she uses it. I wanted to get closer to understand better, but I couldn't risk dying. I've been worried this was going to happen since we first came here, and I just kept thinking about you raising our kid alone, and I couldn't make my body move. Ochiko frowned. Had she ruined Deku's career? She wrapped her arms around him. I have always known there was a chance you would die, she murmured. But I am glad that you came home to me. It wouldn't be a terrible thing if he quit being reckless, but she didn't want him to resent her for killing his career. Deku frowned. But I need to start thinking about you too. He sighed. I don't know what's going to happen after this mission, but I'm going to be in my child's life. He would still do hero work, but he would be careful and he would take fewer missions. Ochiko smiled at him, kissing his forehead gently. Okay. She wondered if these words really meant anything. She kissed his head gently. He saw Ida walking down the hall. He looked tense. He had scratches all over his body, and some sloppy-looking stitches that Deku suspected he had done himself. His hero costume was in shambles. What happened on his recon mission? Deku frowned as he walked towards Tenya, trying to hide his fear and concern. As he looked at all the wounds and gashes on his body. Tenya, can Achiko and I have a moment? Ida looked at Deku. His eyes were somehow quite calm. Deku supposed he had debriefed with Kaken, but his cuts looked painful, some even looked infected. Mr. and Mrs. Midoriya, of course. He nodded once as he stepped towards Deku, who smiled weakly at him. Achiko looked at him sadly, nodding once. How are you, Ida? She murmured. To be frank, I've been better, Mrs. Midoriya. Achiko nodded, looking at him and sighing. Deku slipped an arm around his wife, rubbing her side gently. Did you see her too? Deku murmured. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it through her horde. Ida replied. Deku nodded. It should be him, covered in cuts and bruises. Achiko frowned. Did Himikoken make it back with you? Ida frowned, looking at her. Achiko, I'm sorry I lost sight of her. I'm not sure where she ended up, but she did not arrive back at the base with me, no. Achiko nodded. Deku felt her tense up, and he frowned. Hey, she murmured. We will send a patrol out to find her. He looked at Achiko. He could see in her eyes that she planned to go looking for herself. Ida nodded, looking at Achiko with a frown. I can find her myself. Achiko said softly. Deku frowned. I would rather you rest, given how you're trying to avoid stress. I'm going to be stressed until I know she's safe. Achiko, you're already PRGNT in a war zone. I would really like it if you didn't actively throw yourself into the war. He wanted to scream. Achiko had told him she would be careful. Literally a day prior, but he also understood her reaction. We will go look for her. Deku replied. Okay? Tonight. Achiko nodded sadly. Okay. I was not aware that you two were expectant parents. Ida said softly. What wonderful news, you'll make splendid parents. Deku nodded. We found out last night. His hand lowered to gently touch Achiko's belly, a small smile coming to his lips. He would be a splendid dad. He just had to get them out of here. He looked at his wife and kissed her forehead. Deku looked at Achiko's eyes and kissed the top of her head. Ida smiled at them, nodding once. Well, I hope you found a way to celebrate. Deku nodded once with a weak smile. A night of snuggles. That was celebration enough for now. Are you sure that you want to go look for Himiko? I can go back out there. No, Ida, Achiko murmured. You just got back, you need to rest. And you are carrying the #1 hero's child. What does Deku's title have to do with anything? This villain is largely an enigma. We have no idea what tools she has in her arsenal. If she could somehow sense the child, it could draw unwanted attention. Knowing of the #1 hero's child is a good way to mess with the #1 hero. Deku nodded, feeling better about his own thoughts about the same thing. We need to keep knowledge of your PRGNCY to the base as long as possible, he murmured. We really don't have a way to know how far along you are, and you're not showing, but we don't know if her specters can use their quirks, or if any of them would have quirks that could sense it. He murmured. I'm PRGNT, I'm not injured. Achiko murmured. Deku nodded sadly. I just don't want one of them to smell it on you and for it to make you a target. I know, it's already something that would be a risk before I'm worried the PRGNCY could exacerbate it. He sighed. What are you so worried about? I don't want your Yuters coming back to me without you. Deku replied. Achiko nodded sadly, tears falling from her eyes. She has more ghosts than any of us, Deku. We can't just leave her out there. We aren't going to. Deku replied, wrapping his arms around her tightly. I will go out personally, immediately and get her. Okay? Please just stay here. Stay safe. Achiko nodded. I want to go with you. She murmured. Deku nodded. Okay. He would keep her safe, and if she didn't come with him, it seemed likely she would go alone. Ida frowned. Deku looked at him and sighed. Go see our medical team, he murmured. Your cuts look awful. He gave him a sad smile. We'll be back by nightfall. Achiko nodded, grabbing her husband's hand gently. Been a while since we worked together. Deku nodded, smiling softly at her and kissing the top of her head. Before we linked back up, I think. He murmured. His eyes rested on her tummy and then went up to her eyes. He was terrified. If anything happened, he would have no way to check on his little one's health, or Achiko's. He always avoided doing missions with her, because he knew it would cause problems, and now they were amplified. He kissed her cheek gently before telling Mirio where they were going. He would tell Shoto he was going to be a dad that night, and his mother in the morning. Everything was going to be fine. Mirio looked at Achiko with a slight frown, but he nodded his head. All right. Deku nodded, holding his wife's hand tight, leading her out of the base and looking around with a sigh. Is there anywhere in the city where you guys used to hang out before she cut off our connection with the outside world? Deku murmured. We had a few. Achiko murmured. We can start in the mall, it's the closest one. Deku nodded. Okay. He murmured. Achiko put her hands in her pockets sadly. Of all of Toga's ghosts, which one would be best to weaponize? Do you remember anything about that guy Toga always talks about? Twice. Only what she's told me. Deku sighed. Achiko nodded sadly. Let's just go to the mall. Achiko murmured. Deku nodded, going with his wife to the mall, stepping inside and looking around. Everything looked pretty normal, empty, but normal. He looked at Achiko and rubbed his back as he smiled at her weakly. He saw a vitamin store and glanced at Achiko before shaking his head. He needed to focus on his mission. Prenatal vitamins were something he could think about after they found Toga. He sighed. I don't think she's here. Achiko nodded sadly. I don't either. She murmured. I told her if she ever got lost, to meet me at that mochi stand. She whimpered, wiping her eyes. Deku frowned. I wonder if she knows she's lost, he sighed. If she's with a ghost, she might get confused. There have been cases of it before. Achiko frowned. So you think that she lured Toga away from the group? Achiko started sobbing, and Deku felt his chest tighten. Why would she do it with Toga specifically? Hopes of an alliance? It seemed unlikely. What would she gain from an alliance with Toga, and Toga hadn't been a villain in like 5 years? Was it to try and lure Achiko away from the base? He looked at her with a sigh. Where would she lure Toga for Achiko to follow her? Deku frowned. I know where she is. I need you to get back to base. Okay? It's a trap. Why would she set a trap for me? Deku looked at his feet sadly. To kill you, and use your likeness against me, Achiko. Go back to base, okay? I'm going to bring her back. Achiko hesitated, but she nodded, kissing him gently before heading back to base. Deku watched her go back and sighed sadly. He wondered if he was going to come home to her. Forgive me, Kaz, your Auntie Toga needs a hero too. Was this how walking into battle would feel now? He sighed. Was it going to get worse after he met the kid? He heard Nana, trying to console him, but it wasn't helpful. He looked at his boots before forcing himself to walk towards the place where he had last seen Necrokitty. He was moving towards his target when he heard sobbing. He frowned, head turning wearily towards the sound before running towards Toga. She was covered in ash, and his heart sank. Himikoken, he murmured. What happened? She was gasping, struggling to speak through her sobs. Deku held his arms out for her and she jumped into his embrace. What happened? He murmured. He was leading me out into the middle of nowhere. He kept asking about my new friends. You and Achiko. The questions got so specific, like he was trying to assess your weaknesses, and it became clear that he wanted to hurt you and Achiko, and I knew that he was dead. Of course I knew he was already dead, so I killed him. I killed him, Deku. Deku nodded sadly. He didn't ask who it was. He suspected he already knew, and he didn't want to pry right now. Thank you. Toga, thank you so much for your sacrifice, he murmured. Let's get you back to base. Achiko really wants to see you. Toga nodded her head, but she kept sobbing. Deku lifted her up and sighed, beginning to carry her to the base. Is she really having a baby? Toga murmured. Deku frowned. Who told you that? It's been circulating the base since you guys got there. Did the ghost say anything? No. Toga murmured. Is she not Piarginanti? She is. Deku said with a soft smile. I'm just hoping that Necrokitty doesn't know. Is that what we're calling her? It's what I've been calling her. Deku said, blushing with a sigh. Toga smiled at him weakly, looking at the ground with a sigh. Happy to hear you speaking coherently. Achiko is going to want to tell you herself though, so when we get to base, can we pretend that you didn't guess that when we get back to base? Toga nodded, yeah. She murmured as Deku approached the doors to their base and opened them. He sat her down on her feet and watched his sobbing wife run to hug them. He smiled, happy he could help her, and make her happy. This was what he was best at. Toga smiled at Achiko as she rapid-fired questions at her head. She had relived the worst moment of her life, but seeing Achiko so worried, and spending time with Deku, she felt a little better. I'm fine, she sighed. Achiko nodded, wiping her eyes. You were right, Himikoken, I'm having a baby. Deku frowned. How many people told you were P-Arginin-T, Achiko? Everyone. Toga smiled weakly at her friend, but she only believed you. Can Toga stay in our room tonight? Achiko murmured. Deku nodded, of course. He sighed, kissing the top of Achiko's head. Deku was quiet as he took Achiko and Toga to the part of the base they usually slept in. He sat down on the floor and watched Toga begin to cry again. Achiko wrapped her arms around her friend and frowned. Do you want to talk about it? Toga's eyes were on Achiko's midsection. Deku frowned, feeling unnerved as he gently wrapped an arm around Achiko and pressed his hand to it, as if he could protect his family from the monsters with only the back of his hand. Achiko cleared her throat, looking at her husband and then at his hand and putting her hand on top of his. What's wrong? She keeps looking at it, and I don't know why. Toga frowned. Of course Deku still thought she was a monster. And no, I'm not because of you. Himikoken, I just am worried you're looking at it because of something that the ghost said. Toga nodded. It didn't mention the baby, but it was probing, trying to get me to tell it about you, trying to find things it could do to hurt you. I was so nice at first, I really thought it might be him, but then he started saying terrible things, trying to get me to give him information about you too. Deku frowned, nodding his head as he sighed. Do you mind if I ask you some questions? He murmured. He was worried about his friends and his family, but he wasn't going to hurt Toga to put his mind at ease. I would like some time first. Toga replied quickly. Deku nodded once. I am going to interrogate Ida then, he replied, hesitating as he looked at his wife. He wanted to spend time with her, talk about their child, and try to forge a bond with it before it came into the world. He had plenty of time to do that, hopefully. He had no idea how far along Achiko was, but she was pretty little. He didn't think she could be that far along and not have a bump. He had tried to feel for one. Her tummy was flat. He had plenty of time to bond with his baby. Right now, the best thing he could do for the baby was figure out who he was fighting so he could defeat them and get his wife home to a real hospital, so that Eri and Momo weren't delivering his child. Achiko smiled at him and his heart melted a little. He kissed her gently before standing up and kissing her cheek. I'll be back, he murmured. Achiko nodded her head, smiling at him weakly. Thank you, Deku, for everything. Deku smiled at her weakly, pressing a hand to her tummy again. I love you, he sighed. I'm sorry we haven't gotten any alone time to talk about the baby, he murmured. It's okay, Deku, right now we need to focus on everyone's survival. It's only been a couple of days. I'll stay here with Toga. Deku nodded. He thought about telling her that he would be back to snuggle her that night, but he didn't want to make promises she couldn't keep. He just looked at her and kissed her gently before going to talk to Ida. Achiko looked at Toga with a frown, putting her hands in her pockets. What now? She murmured. Toga smiled at her weakly, gently pressing her hand to Achiko's belly and huffing. How do you feel? She murmured, looking down at her stomach. Achiko sighed. She was going to have to get used to people touching her stomach, wasn't she? Better now that you're safe, she murmured. Toga nodded, smiling weakly. She didn't want to talk about twice. You still convinced it's a boy? I think it is, and in calling the baby by a name helps me see it as well, a goal I'm working towards instead of a lot of weight gain and discomfort. Imagining a tiny Deku helps you deal with the kid's nonsense better? I mean yes, but to be clear, the nonsense in question is a baby that I chose to have forming in a healthy way and in a way he cannot control. Toga nodded, BSRD. Achiko smiled weakly at her and rolled her eyes. I am married to his father. Are you sure? I am certain. Toga smiled in return with a sigh. Good to know. Achiko rolled her eyes. Like I said, glad to see you're feeling better. Just wondering about the likelihood little Himiko comes out with green hair and freckles. Pretty high. Achiko murmured with a soft smile. She didn't know how happy Deku would be if she asked to name their child after Toga after she had already told him they could name it after All Might if it was a girl. To be clear, you are asking if you are the father? Achiko murmured, because there are a number of issues with that theory. I spend more time with you than your husband does. You know hanging out doesn't make babies, right? I do. Achiko nodded with a soft smile. Good. Deku frowned as he stepped through the door and looked at Ida. He was still in his hero costume, his hair was disheveled, he barely looked like Tenya. He put his hands in his pockets as he sat next to him. I'm sorry, but I have some questions. Ida looked up at him with a frown, but he nodded, of course. Deku sighed, shaking his head. I'm sorry, I should have done my job and gotten the information when I went to look for it, but he was too scared to do his DMN job. It wasn't a feeling he had ever had before, and he hated it. He was the #1 hero, but he was afraid to die. Was it so bad? Being afraid to miss the birth of his child? Or even the life of his child? Or even worse, the death of his wife? He wanted to be with Achiko when she welcomed their child into the world, but he knew he wouldn't be. He also knew that there was a considerable chance that she would die doing that very thing, and a considerable chance that he would miss the life and death of his child. He would be lucky if he ever got to hold them. Hell, he would be lucky if he got to feel them kick. But before he was Achiko's husband, before he was Kaza's father, he was the #1 hero. No matter how much he loved his family, they came second to a promise he made when he was 15 years old. Ida sighed, no need for apologies. What do you want to know? Deku frowned, looking at the floor. Can you tell me what happened to you? Tenya nodded his head, before looking at Deku. Deku frowned. He hadn't noticed the stitches above his eyebrow before. He supposed it made sense. His glasses probably dug into his skin when they broke. He was going to have a scar. His hero costume was broken in places. Hatsum would repair it when they got home, but they had no idea when he would get home. He wanted to look closer at Tenya's wounds, but he had asked him a question, and he needed to listen to his answer. You okay, Midoriya? Yes. I'm fine. Just hadn't noticed the gnash over your eye, he sighed. Oh. My glasses shattered, he sighed. I had to use one of my spares. Well, I guess it's a good thing you packed those. Deku sighed. Anyways, I was almost to the coordinates that you sent me when we were attacked by a wave of phantoms. Most of them were seemingly just civilians from this town, but one of them was my elder brother, T-Tensei. Ida looked down at his knees as he hugged himself. Deku frowned. I'm sorry, Tenya, he sighed. Ida looked at his lap and shook his head. I couldn't fight him. No matter how many hits he landed, I just kept trying to reason with him, like a fool. That's not foolish, Tenya. It's human. Deku wiped his eyes. We know that these specters aren't actually our loved ones, but that doesn't make it any easier to fight them. That's very kind, Midoriya, but I hurt people with my weakness. If I had just finished him, Toga wouldn't have gotten separated from us. That's not true, Tenya. You couldn't have gotten Toga not to follow twice even if your focus was on her. Trust me. Tenya sighed. Still, it shouldn't have been on you and Mrs. Midoriya to find her. It wasn't an issue. So, you didn't fight Tensei. How did you get back here? It fell on Kaminari, who electrocuted him. Their weaknesses seem to be fire and electrocution. Hand-to-hand combat doesn't work nearly as well. Can they use their quirks? Some of them can, some of them can't. That doesn't make sense. Unless... Deku frowned. Did the abilities of the specters depend on the amount of knowledge Necrokitty had on the person? But for that to be true, she would have to know NTMT details about all of his friends' lives. He supposed death certificates were available to the public, and deaths of pro-heroes were largely televised. Whoever this Necrokitty is, she knows a great deal about all of us. She's likely been building up to this for a long time. All of the specters were made by her, seemingly out of nothing. I assume she's playing with us. I can't imagine they actually have weaknesses because they seem to be mirages. I cannot imagine killing them is possible. They're not alive. She's trying to lull us into a sense of false security. Make us think we have the pattern down so that she can change the rules. So what do we do then? Just don't let your guard down. don't assume you know how to end this. My guess is electrocution is one of the weaknesses now, because she has a plan to hurt Kaminari and wants to make sure he's present when she brings it out. So we need to quit using Kaminari? For the time being I am guessing she's going to try to use his family against him somehow. How would she do that? Kyoka is alive and well. He hasn't seen her in months, so much as hearing her voice would probably be enough to mess with his head. Tenya nodded, but he looked worried. So we can't bring Kaminari to our next mission, even though we know he can help with the hordes? You said fireworks too. We have a lot of people with pyrokinesis here, bring some of them. Deku sighed. He should meet up with Kaken, talk about a strategy moving forward, but he wanted to go and lay down with his wife. He supposed he could go and see if Kaken was busy. He nodded, beginning towards the side of the base where Kaken spent most of his time. Deku smiled to himself when he got to Kaken's room and saw that he was already unwinding for the night, meaning that he could spend time with Achiko, talk about their baby, their future. It didn't seem real. He had been thinking about a baby for months, but the idea that Achiko was carrying their child inside of her didn't seem real. He supposed it was probably because she wasn't showing yet, and that he hadn't spent a lot of time with her since they found out they were having a child. He wanted to tell his mom, but he also wasn't sure if he should call her yet, because there was a high chance that she would never meet her grandchild, and if he could save anyone from heartache, he would. But he had no idea how far along she was, and he didn't want to tell Inko about his baby after they were born, but also he didn't know if it was fair for him to tell Inko before Achiko was ready to tell her parents, because he was sure that Inko would tell them. He sighed softly. He would have to talk to Achiko about it. He went to the door and sighed, watching his wife talk to Toga with a weak smile. Achiko smiled when she saw her husband, waving at him as she stood up and went to give him a hug. Deku hugged her back, kissing her head as he sighed, closing his eyes. He loved seeing her every day, but he hated that she was here. How is Himikoken? She's good, I think. We've just been talking about the baby. Deku smiled at Achiko softly. He hoped she liked talking about the baby, because it was probably going to be the only thing anyone wanted to talk to her about for a while. He nodded his head, gently pressing a hand to her stomach and sighing as he looked down at it. Still flat as it had been when he left her 45 minutes ago. His eyes rested on hers and he grinned, pecking her lips gently. He couldn't feel them yet, but his child was in there. He had been thinking so much about what this baby was going to do to him. He had not thought nearly enough about the ramifications this could have for Achiko. Do you feel okay? You feel sick at all? Hungry? I mean, I'm a little uncomfortable, but nothing abnormal. I'm sure Kaz is fine. She murmured. I asked how you are. Deku replied gently. I'm great. She replied softly. I'm excited. This is what I wanted. Achiko, I can tell when you're hiding something. Deku murmured. Achiko's eyes showed him that he had just upset her. He wanted to punch the wall. He wasn't sure what to do to fix it. Did I say something wrong, Oka? No, she murmured. I don't want you worrying about me. You have more important things to worry about. Deku's heart sank. Why would I have to worry about you? Are you worried? Was there something wrong with the baby? Was there something wrong with Achiko? Achiko hesitated. Speak. Deku's heart broke when Achiko jumped. I'm sorry, you're my wife. You are the most important thing in the world to me. It was a lie, but he wanted it to be true, and he really thought it might be. I can't be the most important thing to you, Deku. You have a war to fight. I can't do that if I'm worried I'm going to come back to base and find out my wife and child died while I was away. You won't, I promise. I'm sure Kez is fine. I don't have a reason to think he's in danger. I am just paranoid. Be because of Dash. Deku nodded his head sadly, feeling guilty as he slipped his arms around her and kissed her head again. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have pushed you. I want to know everything about the baby, okay? Please? Everything that happens. Achiko nodded. Okay. I'll tell you all about our baby every time you come back. You get an update about the baby. Every time he kicks, every time I throw up. I'll let you know. She murmured. Deku nodded. Okay. He smiled at her weakly. I would like that. Achiko nodded. Okay. Deku grinned, kissing between her eyes. So. When can we tell our parents? Deku sighed. Well, I was going to tell my mom later tonight. Achiko replied with a shrug. Deku nodded his head in reply, then he could tell his mom in the morning. I didn't want to tell my mom before you told your parents, he sighed. Achiko nodded her head before sighing. I'll call her tonight. She murmured. Have you eaten dinner? Achiko shook her head. I got distracted. Deku nodded he hadn't eaten either. He kissed her forehead before sighing. I'll grab all three of us some food. He smiled at Toga and waved at her before going to the kitchen. There had been a care package sent that day. He found some strawberry candy and soda for Achiko, and cherry for Toga before grabbing some food with actual substance from the fridge, rice with vegetables. He reheated it before talking his armful of stuff back to where Achiko and Toga were still sitting. He set it in front of them, eating his rice and watching Achiko eat hers. It made him happy. Achiko smiled at him and he smiled back, looking at Toga, who still looked pretty shaken up. He smiled at her. Do you think the baby is a boy too? Toga forced a smile. I hope not. I don't think the world can handle another Deku. Deku smirked. That wasn't how you felt in high school. I thought a lot of stupid things in high school. Deku nodded. Fair enough, he sighed. So what did I miss? You ladies talk about anything important? Achiko shrugged. Like I said, we just talked about the baby. Deku nodded with a yawn. I can take the dishes back and you can go to bed if you want. I'll call mom and dad, and then I'll be right in. Deku nodded his head. I'll wake you up before I go to Kaken's bunk in the morning. Say goodbye. He was a bit worried he would be going on patrol the next day. At least he had gotten to see Achiko smile again, he supposed. Achiko stood up, collecting plates. Their candy was still in its bag. She would eat it in the morning. She took the dishes to the kitchen, washing them and putting them away before going back to the room she shared with Deku and, on most nights, Toga. She stayed outside her door to call her mother. Hi mama, is daddy home? She sighed. No, nothing's wrong. No, I'm not coming home either. She told her parents about everything, about the PRGNNCY, the fact that it was planned, that she was a little scared, but she was mostly excited. She could hear in their voices that they were worried, and she wanted to put them at ease, but she wasn't sure what she could say that would make them feel better. She knew that her life was in danger, but she also knew there was nothing to be done about it. She finished the call and let herself cry for a few minutes before going into the room. She climbed into the bed between Deku and Toga, who sighed. You okay? She murmured. I'm fine. Achiko sighed. My parents were just worried about me and I didn't know how to comfort them. Toga sighed. Everyone was worried about Achiko, but she didn't say that. She yawned, and Achiko yawned too. There was nothing to say that would make Achiko feel better, so she fell asleep between her two favorite people. Deku sighed when he woke up at 4 a.m., looking at his wife and her friend and shaking Achiko awake gently. Achiko? He murmured. She groaned, sitting up and looking at him. He smiled at her. I'm going to talk to Kaken. I'm not sure if I'm staying on base today or not. I just wanted to say goodbye. He rested his hand on her tummy and smiled softly. I'll see you soon, Achiko. He looked at his hand, before taking it off her stomach and kissing her gently, getting up and going to Kaken's room. Katsuki waved. How's Cheeks? Great. Deku smiled softly. Glad to hear it. Bakugo smiled slightly. He really did hope Deku got to have a happy family. He deserved a pleasant home life. You talked to Ingenium? Yeah. I think she's trying to lull us into a false sense of security. I think she has a plan to attack Chargebolt, so I think he should stay on base. Until further notice. Bakugo frowned. Chargebolt left base with Mirio's patrol about a half hour ago. Deku frowned. Surely her attack wouldn't be ready yet, right? Where were they going? Deku, you can't think that you're going to catch them. Deku frowned. Where were they going? I'll bring Shoto with me. Apparently fire quirks are effective against them. Katsuki sighed. They were going to look at the place Tenya was attacked a couple days ago. He put his gauntlets on chapter text. Deku, Shoto, and Katsuki thought that they knew where they were heading. Ida always gave accurate instructions, so it was odd that they had been at the location Mirio's team was meant to be scoping out for hours, and they had not seen his team. Shoto stopped walking with a sigh. Maybe Lemillion got lost. Not likely. Deku sighed. I think we need to backtrack. They probably hit a snag. Katsuki nodded, sighing softly as he stood up and looked at Shoto. You think they were attacked before they made it here and we didn't see it? Deku frowned. Had they taken the wrong path? Come to think of it, there hadn't been any signs of Mirio's squad on the path they took, so what was going on? Deku sighed. One of the squads took the wrong route altogether, but why would Mirio do that? Shoto frowned, trying to think about the path they had taken. I think we should just retrace our steps. Deku frowned. I'm worried we'll just get more lost. He replied, I'm pretty sure she's messing with us. We're trapped in a maze. How? I thought her quirk was raising the dead. It seems to be more complicated than that. Deku replied, I think she can warp reality. She's just using the necromancy thing to F with us. A false sense of security. Bakugo buried his head in his hands and screamed curse words into the wind. Deku nodded once. He was terrified, but he knew he couldn't lose his cool. He sat down and sighed. So what the F are we supposed to do? Bakugo replied. Deku stared blankly forward. Right now we need to think. Katsuki nodded once. He was surprised Deku was keeping his cool right now. She said, if we're trapped in a maze she created, then she's probably watching us. Deku nodded. Almost certainly, we're probably only separated from Mirio and his squad by her and her quirk. Assuming she trapped them too, and she isn't specifically targeting us. Shoto sighed, sitting down and looking at Deku. He had a feeling they were trapped because of Deku. She was trying to figure out how to hurt him, which was terrifying because Deku had a lot of ghosts she could draw from. Maybe she wanted Bakugo. He supposed he didn't have nearly as many. Deku was quiet as he held his head in his hands. If she was watching him, he had to choose what he said very carefully. He also needed to keep his mind sharp. He couldn't let himself fall victim to the specters. She didn't have Achiko, or his mom, or All Might. These were all illusions. Deku sighed. Could they start pushing at the edges of the bubble? If he walked far enough in the right direction, he would find her before long. Shoto frowned. You think we should split up? Walk different directions until one of us finds her? Deku frowned. He wasn't sure. They didn't know anything about her, but surely any one of them could take her on, right? Katsuki shook his head. I don't think your head is in the right place for you to be dealing with your ghosts alone. What's wrong with Midoriya? Shoto asked. Nothing that we're going to talk about with her eyes on us. Deku replied. Shoto frowned. So there was something that made Achiko vulnerable. He wondered what happened. Deku was protective. She probably just had the flu. I'm fine. Deku said he needed to get back to her. He looked around. He started to levitate and attempt to see the area around them better, but as he looked around he didn't recognize the terrain at all. He didn't see anything that he recognized. He didn't see anyone besides Shoto and Katsuki. What the hell? Even the way they had come from was unrecognizable. What was going on? Had she stalked them out here and then dumped them in the middle of nowhere to find their way back? Gone back to play with her other toys? Deku had no idea. He didn't think she was there anymore, but he also didn't think he should be making any assumptions right now. Deku looked at his friends and shook his head. I don't think she's here, but I'm also not sure which way we came from. Nothing looks familiar. I think she messed with our perception coming here and left us to figure out our way back. Katsuki frowned. Why? So that we can't make it to Kaminari in time, and she can come play with us after she finished playing with them. Deku frowned. But we also shouldn't rule anything out. She may also still be watching. Deku sighed. Bakugo nodded with a sigh. I say we start trying to get back to the base. Deku nodded his head. I think so too. I have no idea how to get back. Shoto nodded with a sigh. Are we trying to find the base or Mirio? He sighed. Mirio. Deku replied. Shoto sighed. We should go towards the city's center. That's where Tenya was attacked, and you found Toga not far from there, isn't it? Deku nodded. And if she took the time to stalk us all the way out of the city, that means we were going in the right direction. Deku nodded. It was really all they had, and it made sense to him. Bakugo shrugged. Not like we have a lot of options. Let's go, he sighed as all three of them headed towards the center of the city. Deku was silent, tense. He had no idea what this monster knew about him, and he was terrified to find out. He felt Bakugo and Shoto at either side of him, and it made him feel a little better, but he was far from at ease. Achiko is safe. She has nearly 100 of the best heroes in Japan with her. No one is going to let her get hurt. He sighed. He hoped she wasn't too worried. He had told her he would be home for dinner, and that was pretty unlikely now. He had left base at 4 in the morning, and now the sun was going down again. How had he thought that he was trailing his friends who had left a half hour earlier? Were his friends still being tortured, or were they back at the base safely? He had so many questions and no answers. His legs ached, and he was hungry, but he would rest when he knew his friends were safe. Katsuki sighed. It's getting dark. We might need to start thinking about finding somewhere to sleep tonight. Deku sighed. You think Mirio dash. Not much we can do if we can't see where we're going. Deku nodded sadly. Taking his backpack off and getting out his sleeping bag, you guys good to just sleep here? He huffed. He was exhausted. He hadn't done much sleeping since he found out he was going to be a father. How much time do you think has passed? We've been walking all day. Shoto replied, looking a bit confused by the question. Yeah, but how had we spent so long thinking we were tracing our friends who left a half hour before we did? Guess we lost track of time. For 6 hours? Shoto frowned, pinged his head to the side, and Deku buried his face in his hands. He had no idea if they were out of her bubble, how much time had passed, or what to do about any of it. Look. Katsuki sighed. We'll take shifts sleeping. One of us awake at all times. I'll take the first shift. Wake Deku up after 2 hours. Shoto takes the last shift. Deku nodded. Thank you, Kaken. He climbed into his sleeping bag and dreamed about a little girl with auburn hair and freckles. Achiko could dream about her son all she wanted, but he really thought he was going to have a little girl. He groaned when Katsuki shook him, but he got up, thanking Katsuki for taking the first shift and staring into the horizon. He ate some of the dried fruit he had in his backpack, staring into the distance before he heard something in his right ear. Deku-kun? Where are you? Come back to bed. Deku tensed. What was Achiko doing all the way out here? She isn't out here. He reminded himself as he moved his face back to where it originally had been. Oh, Izuku. I'll never understand why you married me if you had no intention of coming home to me. I miss my husband. He felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned his face to see Achiko, but not the Achiko he was used to seeing on the base. This Achiko looked like the Achiko that he had come to Hengoku with. Her hair was cut into the bob she liked to wear it in. She looked sleepy, but not exhausted. And it almost hurt more, seeing the ravages this mission had had on her, and knowing that it was unlikely to let up. She hadn't even used his child against him, and he already felt like shit. He ignored her. Did you ever even want a baby, Deku? Or did you just say that to shut me up? Deku shook his head. It's none of your business, you're not my wife. He whimpered. I suppose a biological child might be an easier way to get a successor. Maybe I could give you a quirkless child if we tried enough. Deku frowned. She wasn't using the PRGNCY against him, and yet he still wanted to scream. It was something that he had been asked a few times, and it always made him squirm. I would never see my child as a means to an end. I would never wish my quirk and my life onto my child. And my wife knows that. She knows I wouldn't assign our child the role of child soldier at birth. She wouldn't be having my kid if she dash. Deku buried his head in a hand as he tried to calm down, and the imposter vaporized before his eyes. Shoto rubbed his eyes as he sat up. Who are you talking to? Deku, Shoto, and Katsuki thought that they knew where they were heading. Ida always gave accurate instructions, so it was odd that they had been at the location Mirio's team was meant to be scoping out for hours, and they had not seen his team. Shoto stopped walking with a sigh. Maybe Lemillion got lost. Not likely. Deku sighed. I think we need to backtrack. They probably hit a snag. Katsuki nodded, sighing softly as he stood up and looked at Shoto. You think they were attacked before they made it here and we didn't see it? Deku frowned. Had they taken the wrong path? Come to think of it, there hadn't been any signs of Mirio's squad on the path they took, so what was going on? Deku sighed. One of the squads took the wrong route altogether, but why would Mirio do that? Shoto frowned, trying to think about the path they had taken. I think we should just retrace our steps. Deku frowned. I'm worried we'll just get more lost. He replied, I'm pretty sure she's messing with us. we're trapped in a maze. How? I thought her quirk was raising the dead. It seems to be more complicated than that. Deku replied, I think she can warp reality, she's just using the necromancy thing to F with us. A false sense of security. Bakugo buried his head in his hands and screamed curse words into the wind. Deku nodded once. He was terrified, but he knew he couldn't lose his cool. He sat down and sighed. So what the F are we supposed to do? Bakugo replied. Deku stared blankly forward. Right now we need to think. Katsuki nodded once. He was surprised Deku was keeping his cool right now. She said, if we're trapped in a maze she created, then she's probably watching us. Deku nodded. Almost certainly, we're probably only separated from Mirio and his squad by her and her quirk. Assuming she trapped them too, and she isn't specifically targeting us. Shoto sighed, sitting down and looking at Deku. He had a feeling they were trapped because of Deku. She was trying to figure out how to hurt him, which was terrifying because Deku had a lot of ghosts she could draw from. Maybe she wanted Bakugo. He supposed he didn't have nearly as many. Deku was quiet as he held his head in his hands. If she was watching him, he had to choose what he said very carefully. He also needed to keep his mind sharp. He couldn't let himself fall victim to the specters. She didn't have Achiko, or his mom, or All Might. These were all illusions. Deku sighed. Could they start pushing at the edges of the bubble? If he walked far enough in the right direction, he would find her before long. Shoto frowned. You think we should split up? Walk different directions until one of us finds her? Deku frowned. He wasn't sure. They didn't know anything about her, but surely any one of them could take her on, right? Katsuki shook his head. I don't think your head is in the right place for you to be dealing with your ghosts alone. What's wrong with Midoriya? Shoto asked. Nothing that we're going to talk about with her eyes on us. Deku replied. Shoto frowned. So there was something that made Achiko vulnerable. He wondered what happened. Deku was protective. She probably just had the flu. I'm fine. Deku said he needed to get back to her. He looked around. He started to levitate, an attempt to see the area around them better, but as he looked around he didn't recognize the terrain at all. He didn't see anything that he recognized. He didn't see anyone besides Shoto and Katsuki. What the hell? Even the way they had come from was unrecognizable. What was going on? Had she stalked them out here and then dumped them in the middle of nowhere to find their way back? Gone back to play with her other toys? Deku had no idea. He didn't think she was there anymore, but he also didn't think he should be making any assumptions right now. Deku looked at his friends and shook his head. I don't think she's here, but I'm also not sure which way we came from. Nothing looks familiar. I think she messed with our perception coming here and left us to figure out our way back. Katsuki frowned. Why? So that we can't make it to Kaminari in time, and she can come play with us after she finished playing with them. Deku frowned. But we also shouldn't rule anything out. She may also still be watching. Deku sighed. Bakugo nodded with a sigh. I say we start trying to get back to the base. Deku nodded his head. I think so too. I have no idea how to get back. Shoto nodded with a sigh. Are we trying to find the base or Mirio? He sighed. Mirio. Deku replied. Shoto sighed. We should go towards the city's center. That's where Tenya was attacked, and you found Toga not far from there, isn't it? Deku nodded. And if she took the time to stalk us all the way out of the city, that means we were going in the right direction. Deku nodded. It was really all they had, and it made sense to him. Bakugo shrugged. Not like we have a lot of options. Let's go, he sighed as all three of them headed towards the center of the city. Deku was silent, tense. He had no idea what this monster knew about him, and he was terrified to find out. He felt Bakugo and Shoto at either side of him, and it made him feel a little better, but he was far from at ease. Achiko is safe. She has nearly 100 of the best heroes in Japan with her. No one is going to let her get hurt. He sighed. He hoped she wasn't too worried. He had told her he would be home for dinner, and that was pretty unlikely now. He had left base at 4 in the morning, and now the sun was going down again. How had he thought that he was trailing his friends who had left a half hour earlier? Were his friends still being tortured, or were they back at the base safely? He had so many questions and no answers. His legs ached, and he was hungry, but he would rest when he knew his friends were safe. Katsuki sighed. It's getting dark, we might need to start thinking about finding somewhere to sleep tonight. Deku sighed. You think Mirio dash. Not much we can do if we can't see where we're going. Deku nodded sadly, taking his backpack off and getting out his sleeping bag. You guys good to just sleep here? He huffed. He was exhausted. He hadn't done much sleeping since he found out he was going to be a father. How much time do you think has passed? We've been walking all day. Shoto replied, looking a bit confused by the question. Yeah, but how had we spent so long thinking we were tracing our friends who left a half hour before we did? Guess we lost track of time. For 6 hours? Shoto frowned, pinged his head to the side, and Deku buried his face in his hands. He had no idea if they were out of her bubble, how much time had passed, or what to do about any of it. Look. Katsuki sighed. We'll take shifts sleeping. One of us awake at all times. I'll take the first shift. Wake Deku up after 2 hours. Shoto takes the last shift. Deku nodded. Thank you, Kaken. He climbed into his sleeping bag and dreamed about a little girl with auburn hair and freckles. Achiko could dream about her son all she wanted, but he really thought he was going to have a little girl. He groaned when Katsuki shook him, but he got up, thanking Katsuki for taking the first shift and staring into the horizon. He ate some of the dried fruit he had in his backpack, staring into the distance before he heard something in his right ear. Deku-kun? Where are you? Come back to bed. Deku tensed. What was Achiko doing all the way out here? She isn't out here. He reminded himself as he moved his face back to where it originally had been. Oh, Izuku. I'll never understand why you married me if you had no intention of coming home to me. I miss my husband. He felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned his face to see Achiko, but not the Achiko he was used to seeing on the base. This Achiko looked like the Achiko that he had come to Hengoku with. Her hair was cut into the bob she liked to wear it in. She looked sleepy, but not exhausted. And it almost hurt more, seeing the ravages this mission had had on her, and knowing that it was unlikely to let up. She hadn't even used his child against him, and he already felt like shit. He ignored her. Did you ever even want a baby, Deku? Or did you just say that to shut me up? Deku shook his head. It's none of your business, you're not my wife. He whimpered. I suppose a biological child might be an easier way to get a successor. Maybe I could give you a quirkless child if we tried enough. Deku frowned. She wasn't using the PRGNCY against him, and yet he still wanted to scream. It was something that he had been asked a few times, and it always made him squirm. I would never see my child as a means to an end. I would never wish my quirk and my life onto my child. And my wife knows that. She knows I wouldn't assign our child the role of child soldier at birth. She wouldn't be having my kid if she dash. Deku buried his head in a hand as he tried to calm down, and the imposter vaporized before his eyes. Shoto rubbed his eyes as he sat up. Who are you talking to? Trigger warning: mentions of infant death and suicide. No one actually died, but there is mention. As warped reality is a thing here. Bakugo hesitated, seeing Kaminari sitting on his bed, staring at a picture he had brought with him from home. He looked so vulnerable. It had been months since Necrokitty had him. How had she upset him so much that he was still reeling months later? He supposed that fatherhood must with your head. Make you more sentimental. Kaminari, he sighed, what can you tell me about what you saw? Denki looked up at him. He put the picture Kyoka had sent to him in his pocket. I saw Kyoka, he said softly. I saw Denji. Katsuki stopped himself from making a wisecrack. Can I sit down? Denki nodded, scooting over, looking at Katsuki. Katsuki frowned. Denki looked like sheet. His hair was grown out and frizzy. His leather jacket was ruined. Hell, everyone was going to need hero costumes when they got back. Everyone looked like sheet. It was just most obvious with Kaminari. He was usually so carefree. It was daunting to see him worry like Deku. But need to know more if I can protect others from getting hurt. I'm sorry, but you're a hero. It's your job. I'm sure Kyoka would understand. Denki nodded sadly. I wrote to her about it. She told me I needed to tell you or Deku. Well, Deku is checking in with Cheeks, but if you would prefer to share your experience with him, then by all means. Katsuki sighed. He understood Deku was a better ear, a better shoulder. He was more like a fist. Kaminari sighed. No. I'll talk to you. Deku was preparing to become a father, he wasn't going to put scary images in his head. Alright then, talk. She told me I had been gone for so long. The baby was driving her insane. That she felt so alone and so hurt, she hated Denji. And so she put her fingers through his eyes, she was laughing. Laughing as our son died in her hands. And then she started crying. She asked what she had done, screaming, crying, pulling her hair, before she killed herself too. Denki started sobbing. I wrote to her, and she sent me this picture. He pulled out a picture of Kyoka holding their son. Bakugo smiled slightly. Cute kid. Yeah. Gets it from his mom. Katsuki sighed. He has her earlobes. But not her quirk. Denji replied before, stopping himself. Katsuki didn't give a f about his kid. Bakugo nodded. Deku said he seems to control machines or something. That he turns on the TV, and when he cries everything in the nursery malfunctions. Sounds like a pain, sounds like a handful. Denki nodded. I love him though. I can't tell you how much I miss them. Bakugo sighed. He had spent enough time with Deku these past couple of months that he could imagine. Deku was quiet as he pressed his wife's stomach sitting on his knees as he spoke to her belly. I love you, Tashinori. I'm going to be the best dad I can be, I promise. He looked at Ochako. Has he kicked you yet? How does it feel? Do you feel okay? Any cravings or weird movements? Are you dash? Deku. Ochako sighed, with a small, tired smile. Everything has been normal. I started feeling him move a while after you left. I've been craving berries, mostly, so no, nothing spicy. No weird movements, just little fluttering, just little feet. Deku nodded. He supposed the stuff that people said would help you predict your child's quirk were probably myths. Spicy food might not mean a fire quirk. He hoped his child didn't get a fire quirk. They would have to buy all new furniture, a new house, new everything. It would be much easier if his baby got Ochiko's quirk, or his mom's, then he could just buy little mittens. I love you, Deku. She murmured. But your baby is heavy, can we go sit down please? Deku nodded, letting go of her and watching her go to sit down. He sat next to her and sighed. He should probably call his mom, he thought to himself. He just didn't want to leave Ochiko. Do you mind if I call mom? He murmured. She doesn't know your PRDNT. Ochiko nodded. Okay. She murmured, resting her head in his lap as he called his mother. Hi mom. He said softly. No, I'm not coming home. You are going to be a grandma though. Ochiko can't. We have no way to get her home. She's going to be here with me until we find a way out. But she has me to protect her. She's about 4 months along. We were trying before everything. Well, I'm sorry I didn't tell you we were trying. It wasn't something that was at the forefront of my mind. I'm sorry, next time I will be sure to let you know I've quit buying condoms. Sorry. Yes, that was uncalled for. I'm stressed out. She's showing a little. No, she isn't craving spicy food. Just berries, she said. I know I was going to call you, but then I had to go on a rescue mission and I was gone for months. Deku talked to his mother for about an hour, about Ochiko, about how excited he was to become a father, how Momo and Eri were preparing to help Ochiko deliver the baby, but he was hoping to get her out of here before that. How he hoped to be there when his baby was born, but knew it was unlikely he would be able to be. He told her he loved her, that he missed her, and he hoped that she would get to know his child. When he got off the phone, Ochiko was asleep in his lap. He smiled at her softly, gently rubbing her belly. I love you, Tashinori. He sighed. He still believed he was having a baby girl. After all the dreams he had had about it, it was what made sense to him. He would be happy either way though. Maybe one day he would get to have one of each, maybe even more. He doubted he would have time to have multiple children, but he was in his early 20s, it wasn't impossible. He felt a little kick, a tiny foot pressing against his hand. He felt tears coming to his eyes as a smile came to his lips. I'm sorry, sweetie, did I wake you? I didn't mean to, he murmured to the little foot. Papa loves you. He kept his hand on her stomach, looking at his wife with a soft smile. They really were having a child together. That was their kid's foot. He frowned slightly when Katsuki stepped through the door. Sorry, I needed to dash. Bakugo nodded. I understand, he murmured, looking at Ochiko with a slight smile. That's your Christmas sweater, he murmured. Deku nodded. Yeah. Guess Mom sent it at the beginning of December, and none of Achiko's clothes really fit her anymore. He gently moved his hand to flatten the sweater over her belly. I'm just happy I've been keeping her warm. And I'm happy I can be with her for Christmas and her birthday. Katsuki nodded his head. That's true. He sighed. We need to talk later tonight, okay? I'm going to see Kirishima. You can stay here, spend time with her. But we need to start discussing what happened. Deku nodded sadly. We can do it now. Katsuki shook his head. Stress is bad for the baby. He would never forgive himself if anything happened to Deku's kid because of him. Deku nodded. I appreciate it. He sighed. I do feel like she needs to know what to expect. Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you everything and let you decide what she needs to know, okay? You know her better than me. Deku nodded. Okay. He looked at his friend with a sigh. Enjoy your time with Kiri, he murmured, smiling slightly. Enjoy your time with Achiko and Kaz. Deku laughed softly. You think it's a boy too? It's what everyone on base has been calling the baby. Deku smiled. I think it's a Tashinori. Katsuki smiled a little more. Is that your name for a girl, you DMN nerd? Deku nodded his head. It is. Katsuki nodded. Is that why you kept apologizing to Tashinori? Deku nodded sadly. I kept seeing her. Asking me where I went, where I was going. Why I wouldn't play with her. He wiped his eyes with a sigh. Katsuki nodded. That made more sense to him, he supposed, though he wondered why she hadn't used Deku's dead mentor against him yet. I'll see you tonight. He looked down at Achiko, who was stirring. She looked over at Katsuki and smiled at him as he waved in reply. How do you feel? Better now. She sat up with a groan. Thank you for getting him home to me. Katsuki nodded. He got himself home to you. He sighed. Deku would never leave his wife and his kid to fend for themselves. Achiko smiled at her husband, kissing his nose. Deku smiled at her, running his fingers through her hair. Bakugo sighed. I'll see you later tonight, Deku. Alright, Kaken, see you later tonight. Deku smiled at his wife and pecked her lips gently. I felt our baby kick for the first time. Well, not her first time kicking, I know, but the first time I felt it. Katsuki turned around, going towards the side of the base where he usually stayed with Kirishima. He smiled when he saw Kirishima, going to him and wrapping his arms around him with a tired sigh. Wish I could have come straight to you, but Deku's a little bit of a mess right now, so I had to do the interrogating alone. Kirishima nodded, staying close to his husband, just taking him in. I get it, he replied. He certainly thought Achiko deserved to be put at ease before he did. She had been a mess ever since she woke up and Deku wasn't in bed next to her, and she didn't need any more stress than she was already under. How are you? I'm fine. Beach didn't touch me, she just tortured Deku the entire time. Kirishima nodded. Is he okay? He's fine. Now that he's seen Achiko's okay, he seems to be back to normal. Kirishima sighed, nodding his head. You know, seeing Achiko lately and Denki before. What happened, I kind of think. It might be nice to have a kid. Could grow up with Denji and Deku's kid. I don't know. Bakugo sighed. He would be lying if he said he hadn't thought about it, but he was terrified he would be a shitty dad. Deku was like 90% love anyways, so of course he could love his kid no matter what. Bakugo was not nearly as loving, as non-judgmental. Too egotistical. That was what he thought anyways. We'll talk about it later, okay? Just I can't think about it when I'm shouldering all of this shit. Kirishima nodded. Okay, he murmured. Katsuki sighed. Sorry. Deku and I can't both be weak at the same time. Kirishima nodded. I understand. Not like we can have a kid in the middle of this anyways. Deku sighed as he stepped into the room where Katsuki and Kirishima stayed. He waved to Kiri with a weak smile. Kirishima waved in reply. Good to see you, man. Good to see you. Deku sighed. His head was still with Achiko, but he needed to do his job so that his baby wasn't born on a base. Katsuki huffed. How do you feel? He asked softly. I feel fine. Achiko and Tashinori are safe. Deku sighed. Kirishima ped his head to the side. It's what he wants to name his daughter. Kirishima nodded once. Oh, Achiko really thinks it's a boy. I think it's a girl, Deku said with a small smile. Kirishima nodded. Everyone on the base had been talking about Achiko's son, but he supposed it was just as likely to be a girl. Deku sighed. What did you need to talk to me about, Kaken? Oh. I've been going around asking for what she did to everyone else, and she really seems to be testing us, and I think she's been testing us for long enough that I think we really need to begin preparing for an attack on the base. Deku's heart fell out of his chest, but he swallowed the bile and nodded his head. What makes you think she's planning to attack our base? She led us back here, Maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like a long-winded way to show us she knows where we are vulnerable. Deku nodded in response. Why not attack when we are gone? Deku sighed. Katsuki sighed. I don't know. Maybe it just wouldn't be fun for her that way. Deku nodded sadly. Okay. So what are we supposed to do to prepare? The base is fortified. Everyone here is a skilled fighter. What do we need to do? We need to start learning everyone's weaknesses, everyone's blind spots. Deku nodded, wiping his eyes. Obviously Kaminari's is Kyoka and Denji. He said, I think that I should tell you what Denki told me today. Deku frowned. Why? So you can be prepared to face something similar. Deku nodded his head once, looking at his feet. Is it bad? He watched Kyoka kill Denji and then herself. Katsuki sighed as he watched tears spill from Deku's eyes. If you see Achiko hurt herself, you need to be able to hold yourself together. Okay? You know her, you know she won't dash. But I don't Kaken. I don't know my wife at all. I know she won't hurt our child, I know she won't hurt anyone else, I have no idea if she would hurt herself. Deku hated himself. He hated that he didn't know if his wife was happy, if she would hurt herself, if she already had. He looked at his friend sadly. Kirishima sighed. Do you trust her, Deku? Deku frowned. Of course I trust her. Kirishima looked at him with a nod, then talked to her about it. He sighed. Get to know her better, so that you can recognize if someone is impersonating her. Deku nodded sadly. Okay. Katsuki nodded his head. That's a good idea. He looked at Kiri with a nod of approval. Deku sighed. So, you want us to go through and drill everyone on everything that she could use against them? No way they're going to fess up. They will if they want our help. Katsuki replied. We can't fight their fears for them if we don't know them. Deku nodded his head. When do we start? First thing in the morning. Katsuki sighed. Deku nodded, looking at his lap. He didn't want to think about Achiko hurting herself, but now it was all he could think of. He sobbed into his hands. It took everything not to fall to his knees. Katsuki sighed. So basically, they were going to have to fight this war without Deku. He looked at his feet. He supposed Deku deserved to rest. He shouldn't be here. He should be at home with Achiko, going to sonograms and painting a nursery. It wasn't fair that he had to worry about everyone else, on top of his wife and his child. I think you should go, get some time with Cheeks. Sorry for wasting your time. Deku nodded his head, frowning slightly as he went to go and see his wife. Achiko was eating dinner with Toga, Mina and Tsu. He smiled at them softly as he sat down next to his wife and kissed her cheek. Where is Momo? Every time she sees my bump she gets anxious and has to excuse herself. Achiko sighed. Deku frowned. Achiko sighed. I feel awful that we're putting Doloi on her. Deku sighed. What choice do we have, Oka? She needs to make whatever Eri needs so that you don't die. I know. It's just. I feel bad. Deku sighed softly. Should I talk to her? Achiko shook her head with a sigh. Deku nodded, resting his head on her shoulder. Your meeting with Bakugo didn't last long. Mina sighed. Yeah. He wanted to tell me about Kaminari. He sighed. He wants me to start collecting everyone's fears so I can protect you guys from them. He also suspects that. Right now. Denki and I have the same weaknesses. So he told me what happened to Denki. Toga frowned, looking at Achiko and then back at Deku. She held her knees to her chest and sighed softly. Deku looked at her. Don't worry. We won't let anything happen to Achiko. He sighed. Toga nodded sadly, drinking her broth with a sigh. Deku looked at Achiko's bump. He wanted to touch it, but he didn't want to invade Achiko's space, so he just looked at it. Tsu looked at Deku and pet her head to the side. She supposed he had always been sentimental. "How do you feel, Deku?" she asked softly. "Fine." Deku shrugged his shoulders. "I'm here with my friends and my wife," he murmured. She nodded with a sigh. She hadn't been attacked. She assumed when she was it would be Tokiyami or her siblings. She supposed it might not be her siblings. All of the specters had, seemingly, been public figures. Necrokitty didn't know them. She knew what was on the news and history books about them. So, really, she was pretty safe. Deku, however, was completely F'd. Mina grinned at So, how does it feel? Seeing Achiko showing like that? Deku laughed at his lap. Fing terrifying, surreal. I felt the baby kick today for the first time. It was great. His eyes rested on Achiko's tummy. It feels real now. Achiko forced a smile. There's really a baby in there, she murmured. Deku nodded. Yep. And he had no idea how much time he had until it came out, possibly taking Achiko out of the world so that it could come into it. Deku hadn't thought about becoming a single father in a while. How would he do that? He couldn't do that. He couldn't be a father without Achiko. He would have to give up hero work. He wouldn't have time to grieve. He couldn't cope with Achiko dying, let alone Achiko dying and leaving him a tiny screaming human who he would need to be at the top of his game for. Smile for, care for, help grow into a functioning member of society. He threw up on the floor and began to sob. Achiko frowned, putting her bowl on the floor, climbing into his lap, wiping his tears as she tried to soothe him. Hey baby, hey what happened sweetie? She shook his shoulders. Deku-kun? Deku wrapped his arms around her and sobbed into her shoulder. I can't be a single dad Oka. I can't. Achiko frowned, holding him gently. You won't have to be. I'm not going anywhere. Deku shook his head. He held her close, feeling her bump against his own midsection. It was his baby, but it felt like a ticking time bomb he had planted onto the person he cared about the most. Achiko sighed, asking everyone else to leave as she held her husband close, listening to him mumble the words. I'm killing you over and over again. Women have babies every day, Deku. Not like this. Not in a war zone. Achiko sighed. Well, if you did have to be a single dad, I'm sure you would do just fine. Deku shook his head. I can't, Achiko. He can't. Our baby deserves better. Achiko looked at Deku sadly. Well, I don't know what to do about it, Deku. It's done. Kaz is going to come and I have no control on how gentle he is as he does. Deku nodded sadly, sobbing into her shoulder, kissing her neck. I'm terrified that there's no situation where I'm a good dad. Achiko frowned. I think there isn't a situation where you're a bad dad, she said softly. I can't lose you. And you haven't. Achiko whispered. Everything is going to be okay. I hope you're right. Deku whined, holding her close as he kissed her forehead. Katsuki and Kirishima told me I need to spend tonight getting to know you. Deku murmured. Achiko nodded her head. I would like that. What do you want to know? TW. Mentions of MSERD and blood. Deku was quiet, chin on his wife's shoulder and arms around her belly. He was sleepy, but he wasn't asleep. He felt their child moving around, wondering how Achiko could sleep when their child was so fitful inside of her. He huffed, trying to calm down, making his head slow down. He kissed her head, carefully pulling himself away from her, climbing over her. He knelt down, kissing her forehead, and then her belly. Her eyes opened with a soft whine. Deku frowned. Sorry, I was going to go walk around the base. I can't sleep. Achiko huffed, sitting up as she rubbed the back of her head. I'll go with you. Deku frowned. It would probably be hard for her to go back to bed, in her condition. He ran a hand through her hair. Okay. He watched her stand up, smiling softly as she stretched and ran her fingers through her hair. So much had changed since the beginning of this war, but she was still his Achiko. She held her belly with a sigh. Deku smiled. She's been moving all night. Yeah. He's usually awake when I'm resting, she murmured. Deku smiled weakly. So you're used to it? Yeah. It's pretty normal. Deku smiled at her, grabbing her hand and kissing it gently. Do you want my coat? It's cold and I just dash. I'll take it. Please. she murmured. Deku nodded, smiling at her as he helped her put it on. She had 5 more months of PRDNY. Though his coat was still baggy enough, he suspected she would fit in his clothes throughout the PRDNY. At least he was helping in some way, he supposed. He kissed her gently, resting his hand on the bump again. He grabbed her hand, leading her down the hallway with a sigh. How do you feel? Achiko laughed. You know you're treating me like you did our second year again? Deku frowned. He remembered their second year, being nervous he was going to mess up, hurt her or get her hurt. Those feelings hadn't really gone away, but he had learned to accept that he couldn't control it. But now, with a baby coming into the picture, and seeing her PRGNT in a place like this, those feelings were being stirred again. He was also trying to get to know her again, hoping that they could be where they were when they got married by the time the baby came. Does it upset you? I just want to make sure everything is okay. With us, I want us to be stronger when Tashinori comes, not weaker. Weaker? Then our second year. You don't look at me like you used to. I want to fix that. I want our child to look at their parents and know what I know. What is that? That we love each other. A lot, and we are together because we love each other and not because we're scared to be alone. Achiko frowned. Of course we love each other. We are having a baby, you have to make love to make a baby. Deku laughed softly, smiling at her. Do you really believe that? Achiko nodded her head, pinged her head to the side. Deku shook his head. You're adorable, he sighed. What? Nothing. He pecked her lips gently and rubbed her back. If that's enough to prove I love you, then that's great. I can do that. Achiko laughed. Were you worried I didn't know you loved me? Yes. You don't seem to. You seem to think that I don't care about you as anything other than a part of my image. I know you love me. I wouldn't be carrying your child if I didn't. I just know there are things you love more. Not people maybe, but things. Deku sighed. That's not true. I love you more than anything. My quirk isn't mine, so I can't just think about myself. I need to think about what all of the previous users want. Because if I got what I wanted, I would never leave your side. Especially now. Achiko nodded. Okay. She murmured. Deku kissed her softly. I love you. I love you too. Deku smiled at her, holding her to his chest for a long while. Achiko pulled away with a sigh. I need to go to the bathroom, she murmured, gesturing with her head down the hallway. Deku nodded. Do you want me to walk you there? No. Ugh. I can go by myself. Deku smiled at her. See you soon. Deku watched her go with a soft sigh, yawned, leaning on the wall. He could go to bed now. As soon as Oka got back he would escort her back to their bed. He frowned when he heard her coming. She hadn't been gone long enough to have made it to the bathroom. He forced a smile, not wanting to jump to conclusions. Did you miss M-? Deku-kun? I'm bleeding. Deku frowned. What do you mean you're bleeding? He looked at her. She was wearing his All Might sweater, but he didn't see his coat. Why wasn't she wearing his coat? Had she taken it off on her way to the bathroom and gotten so upset when she noticed she was bleeding she threw it on the floor? But it didn't seem like something she would do, but he would rather console an imposter than act coldly towards his actual wife when she was crying. He wrapped his arms around her. Hey, calm down. Okay? Sometimes PRGNT women spot because No Deku. I'm bleeding a lot. I'm bleeding a lot and there's no way to know if the baby is okay. Deku frowned. Okay. Let's go find Eri, okay? We'll find her and see what we can do. Deku was fighting back his scary thoughts hard. If he was losing his baby, Achiko was losing hers too, and he had to be strong. He could cry later. Right now he needed to know if there was anything to cry about. He led his wife towards Eri's quarters. Everything is going to be okay. Part of Deku felt like this was progress. Before all of this, she probably would have gone to the bathroom and cried alone before going to find Toga or Mina or something, but she had come to him for comfort. He may be losing his baby, but he didn't feel like he was losing his wife anymore. He huffed. He could be losing his child, yes, but he could also not be. Everything will be okay. Everything will be fine. If nothing else, he would have Achiko. He wasn't losing everything. He wasn't losing everything, and he would be strong for Achiko. Oh, please be okay, Toshinori. Or Kaz, whoever you are, just be okay. He thought to himself. The real Okiko, however, was putting Deku's coat back around her shoulders. She sniffed the inside. It smelled like him. She zipped it and washed her hands, avoiding her reflection in the mirror. She knew she wasn't pretty right now, but she really didn't need anyone to think she was pretty, besides Deku. But she was PR'd with his child. That paired with his all-might sweater had to be enough to keep him captivated, right? She knew he would never cheat, but she hoped she kept herself up well enough he didn't want to stray. She sighed. What a ridiculous thing for her to be thinking about right now. She put her fuzzy pink gloves back on and put her hands in her pockets. She went back to where she had left Deku. There was an imposter standing in his place, smiling at her. Hey, he said softly. He wrapped an arm around her. Hi, she replied, leaning into his side. Are you hungry? No. She replied, we ate with the girls tonight, remember? Deku smiled. Yeah, but I don't know. You are eating for two now, so. I am. Achiko nodded her head. But rations dash. There isn't a food shortage. Okay? I would love to cook for my wife like I used to. Achiko frowned slightly. Doesn't it seem a little bit selfish? Let me worry about that. Achiko frowned. Oh, okay. She was confused, but she supposed this wasn't entirely out of character for Deku, and they were having a nice night. She didn't want to mess it up by arguing with him. Deku was trying to show his love, and she would let him. Deku led her to the dining hall and pulled her chair out for her, pushing her back in before going to make her last meal. Eri frowned when he saw Achiko with a large blood stain on her pants. Deku looked at her. Something is wrong. Eri nodded her head. Before we jump to conclusions, let's do some tests, okay? Is there any situation where that doesn't mean what I think it means? Well, it's rare, but some quirks could cause symptoms like that. Just means the quirk is developing in the uterus. Deku frowned. That didn't make him feel better. No matter what, everything will be okay. Eri said, looking at Achiko. She pet her head to the side before looking at Deku. Something was off. She couldn't put her finger on it. Deku, can we talk in private? I would rather we get my wife the care she needs. Deku frowned when he saw he had startled Eri. He considered going back on what he said, but he shook his head. Anything you need to say, you can stay in front of Oka. Not this. Deku frowned, looking at his wife and then at Eri as his heart sank. He nodded. We can step out really quick. Achiko shook her head. Please don't leave me alone, Deku-kun. Please, I can't dash. Eri frowned. Why don't we just do some tests right now? Deku nodded his head, looking at Eri sadly as he sat next to his wife and held her in his arms gently, kissing her cheek. So, Mrs. Midoriya, can you tell me the date of CNCPTN? Is that really what you want to talk about right now? I just want to know if you know the date of CNCPTN. Deku frowned, realizing what Eri was doing. Achiko would have answered before she asked why. She was distressed though. What did we talk about that day, Oka? In our home. It's very important. More important than our baby spilling out of me 5 months early? We need to do this before we can handle that. Why? She whimpered. Just help Toshinori. That made him angry. Achiko never referred to the baby by the name Toshinori, and he knew that Necrokitty knew he had chosen that name. She likely didn't know that Achiko referred to the baby by a different name. He grabbed the thing's shoulders hard. Where is my effing wife? Achiko turned to ash before his eyes, and he punched the wall. Deku was trembling, trying to keep himself together as he sobbed. Deku, Eri murmured, this is a good thing. This probably means your baby is fine, and that Achiko is dash. It probably means that they have Achiko, and that she and my baby won't be fine much longer. Well, you are the #1 hero, okay, let's use those problem-solving skills. Where do you think someone would take Achiko to hurt her? Deku frowned. He was trying to think, but all he could think about was losing Achiko, losing his baby, still thinking about that blood stain on the specter. He wanted to save her, but he couldn't think straight. He looked at Eri with tears in his eyes. I don't know. I don't think there's any way they would convince her to leave the base. Eri nodded. I don't either. Deku huffed. Where are there things that could hurt a pregnant woman? I haven't spent a lot of time on base. But I don't think there is any way for an imposter to get into the weapon arsenal. Eri frowned. All of my equipment is locked up too, so. Probably the cafeteria. Deku nodded. Thank you, Eri. He sighed, running towards the cafeteria. He heard screaming from Mina's room. Eri frowned, grabbing Deku's arm. It's probably Dash. Deku shook his head. I need to check. I am the doctor. I will go check in there. You need to go find Achiko. Deku hesitated. We can both dash. Your wife is likely being poisoned, and you are the one who can show her that quickest. Deku nodded sadly. What was wrong with him? His wife could be dying, that should be the most important thing to him, but for some reason he felt guilty prioritizing her. He shook his head, running towards the cafeteria with tears in his eyes. Eri huffed, stepping into Mina's room to find it empty, so it was just a distraction. Deku was on the right track. She breathed a sigh of relief. She couldn't be the reason Mrs. Midoriya got hurt, and she couldn't. She caught up with Deku. He was sobbing. They're not real screams, they're trying to distract you. I checked. Mina's room is empty. Deku stopped. Eri frowned. Why are you stopping? Why was Mina's room empty? It is the middle of the night. Eri sighed. Let me think about that. Go find your wife. Deku nodded, running to the cafeteria. Achiko's head rested on the table between her arms. She looked like she was sleeping. Deku felt himself praying he wasn't too late. She wasn't snoring, but she typically didn't. He saw his coat over her shoulders. She was so cute. He sat next to her, gently nudging her with his arm. Oka? Curbs? He whispered. She was usually a light sleeper. Achiko, he screamed, grabbing her shoulders. He heard his voice echo off of the walls as he began to sob. He was too late. His wife was dead due to his own negligence. He felt a hand on his cheek. He looked down and saw the most beautiful eyes in the world. What's wrong? She murmured. I thought you were dead. I shook you and you didn't wake up. I'm sorry, I never should have left you alone. She sent one of her things to me. She was posing as you. And you were losing the baby. He started to cry again. I could tell it was an imposter, but if you were losing the baby, I thought maybe you would act odd, and so I took her to Eri, and Eri said it was an imposter and proved it, and an imposter of me brought you here to poison you, I assume. Achiko nodded her head. They did. She murmured, but I could smell that something was wrong, and I didn't eat the pancakes. Deku smiled sadly at her. Of course she could tell the pancakes were off. She had been a pro hero as long as he had been. She was good at sensing things. He hugged her close, getting on his knees and pressing his lips to her belly. My girls are okay. Achiko nodded, running a hand through his hair. You really think we're having a girl? I've been having dreams. She's always Toshinori. I haven't dreamed about Kaz. Achiko smiled softly. I think he's a boy. Deku shrugged. Well, one of us is probably correct. Time will tell. He smiled at her softly. Is she moving? He's asleep, I think. Deku nodded his head with a sigh. His wife and child were healthy. He wanted to take her back to bed, but he was too worried about them returning. We need to go find Eri. Achiko nodded, standing up. That poor kid. She shouldn't be here. Surprised Eraser and Present Mike haven't broken in to take her from us yet. They have tried. Apparently it's impossible to get here from the outside. Some sort of force field. I thought we just couldn't leave. No, apparently people can't get in either. Deku sighed. That is helpful information, actually. His mother couldn't be used against him at least. Deku sighed, going back towards where he had last seen Eri. He frowned as they ran into Toga. Toga looked at Achiko and huffed. Thank God. She wrapped her arms around her. Achiko huffed, hugging her back. You weren't in your room. I heard screams and I ran and you weren't there and I was scared. Someone tried to poison her. Deku sighed, but she saw through it. Toga nodded. So they're here. They're on base. Yes. They're here. Deku huffed. And Achiko and I are going to find Eri. Please don't leave our side. Achiko murmured. Toga nodded. Okay. Deku nodded. Don't listen to the screams, okay? Toga nodded. I never do. Achiko smiled weakly, running her fingers through Toga's. Deku sighed, we need to find Eri. Achiko nodded her head, of course. She started down the hall. Deku followed close behind where they saw Eri, cowering in a corner. Achiko and Deku were by her side in a second. What happened? What did you see? Was it Chisaki? I saw my dad's put me in a cage, she whimpered. They said I was a monster, and I was gonna kill the baby and that I was a monster. Deku frowned. Well, that doesn't make sense. Eraser and Present Mike would never say that, and you saved my baby tonight. You saved her. You saved my wife and my family, and the reason the illusions locked you back here was to keep you from helping anyone else tonight. Eri frowned. Mrs. Midoriya. She looked at Achiko. She had been so upset, she hadn't seen her. She wrapped her arms around her. We were so worried about you. She whimpered. Well, I'm here, I'm okay, the baby's okay, all because of you. Achiko murmured, hugging Eri gently. Eri cried against her shoulder and she just held her with a sigh. It was easy to forget that she was too young for this, any of it. She was only 16, but she supposed that was how old they had been when they first tasted war. Deku huffed, looking around to see where Toga was. Where did Toga go? She's right. Achiko frowned. I don't know. She said softly, looking at Eri. I'm really sorry, but are you ready to go? Eri nodded. Let's go help some people. She sighed, letting go of Achiko and standing up. Achiko huffed, struggling to stand herself. Deku reached out to help, but she didn't take his hand. Standing up on her own, Deku smiled at her weakly, putting his hand away. She was stubborn. Deku followed them down the hall, holding Deku's hand gently. No matter what, I don't want you to leave my side, okay? Deku kissed her head gently. Achiko nodded. What is the plan? We're going to find everyone and group together. Harder to manipulate us if we're all together, right? Achiko nodded. In this specific case, yes. She huffed. We're going to get everyone together, and we are going to stand together in front of the weapon arsenal, so that there is no way for anyone to get in there. She may be able to use quirks, but we won't give her any more advantages. Eri nodded her head. This was the Deku she was used to seeing. This Deku knew what he was doing. Hopefully all of his friends were making good choices, so that he wouldn't break down again. Where to first? She asked softly. I think we should just go down the hall and check inside all of the rooms. It's not super methodical, but I think it's the best idea. Eri nodded. I'll do whatever you say. Achiko nodded. Me too. Denki usually dreamed about his family, Kyoka playing her guitar for little Denji, singing for him. Sometimes he just dreamed about holding his baby again. He was so homesick, he considered quitting hero work when he got home. He was dreaming about feeding Denji a bottle. He usually wouldn't take them from him. He only ever wanted Kyoka, but in his dream, he was hungry enough to take it from him. He woke up to the sound of crying. He stood up with a groan. All right, little guy, calm down, Daddy's comin'. He got to the crib with a huff. It was weird that Kyoka hadn't gotten to him first. She must have been tired. He shrugged. He could take the night shift now and again. He leaned into his son's crib, taking him into his arms. Before hearing Mina Ashido scream, he felt sharp pains in his face and his stomach and his arms as his ears began to ring. He collapsed to his knees as he remembered where he was. At least Kyoka and Denji were far away from here, because this was hell. He looked at Mina. She had cuts on her face, arms, and abdomen. He tried to stand up to get her help, but he cried in pain, collapsing down again. I'm sorry, Mina. I'm so sorry. I get it. I heard you call the bomb a hungry little guy. You're a good dad. Of course she would use your kid to hurt you. He sighed. But your face is all sliced up. Mina sighed. Still fabulous though. Denki smiled weakly. Sure. Deku looked at Achiko with a sigh. She should be in their house. He should be worried about things like her lifting too much, stressing too much about which color to paint the nursery, not zombies poisoning her and her giving birth in a bunker assisted primarily by a teenager. She looked at him and smiled weakly. I'm going to check on Kaminari, she murmured. You said you were going to see Ashido? Deku shook his head. You aren't leaving my side. We'll check on both of them together. We can be more efficient if we split up. If we split up, they can use us against each other again, and we won't be able to help anyone. Deku was trembling. He couldn't do anything if he didn't know Achiko was okay. He looked at her with a sigh. Ashido is closest. He grabbed her hand and led her towards Mina's room. He sighed she really wasn't in there. Achiko frowned. Where would she have gone? Deku sighed. We'll find her. She's probably just bunking with someone else tonight. She doesn't like being alone. We'll find her. Achiko nodded, but it didn't sit right with her. She put her hands in her pockets. Deku kissed her head, wrapping an arm around her hip as he led her to the next room. He opened the door with a frown, watching Achiko run towards them. Mina was holding Denki in her arms. He was bleeding. What happened? Deku asked, as Achiko ran to them, kneeling down beside them. He loved how eager she was to help, but he wished she would hesitate before running into situations that could be traps. They didn't know if that was the real Denki. What happened? She murmured. I saw Denji's crib. He was crying, so I got up to check on him. I took him out of his crib and he just sort of exploded. Achiko frowned. What? I was still half asleep. I heard my kid crying, so I went to check. I didn't realize I was holding a makeshift bomb until I was full of broken glass. Achiko frowned, looking at Mina. Did it get you too? Mina sighed. I'm fine. She replied, but Deku could see some bleeding from beneath her eyes. Can you both walk? He could carry Denki if he had to. Denki groaned. I need help standing. Deku nodded, getting down so he could help lift Denki to his feet. He sighed as he lifted him up and started towards the next room. So what's our plan? Denki groaned. We're trying to gather everyone else so that we can protect each other. Deku sighed, and we were going to sit at the arsenal so that there was no way for the illusions to get to them, but from the looks of that bomb, they might not need anything. Deku looked at Achiko with a sigh. Thank God she had been smart enough to turn away those pancakes. The base was going to need him at 100% capacity. Have they targeted you at all, Ashido? Mina huffed. They showed me Aijiro bleeding to death, but I knew it wasn't him. I knew he was with Katsuki. Deku nodded his head with a sigh. What about you? Denki murmured. Are you okay? I'm fine. Achiko and the baby are fine. Eri is okay. We're just trying to gather everyone else. Denki frowned. It was weird she would just give the number 1 hero a pass. I don't want to go with you. What do you mean you don't want to come with me? I am trying to get you to safety. Achiko frowned. What can Deku say that would make you trust him? What were you and Achiko fighting about when you first got here? Deku frowned, pinging his head to the side. It had been so long, it seemed like a lifetime ago. I found out that she had Anthea a year before and never told me. She really didn't try anything with you? Deku huffed. She posed as Achiko having Anthea while another one posed as me and tried to poison Achiko. It's why we are gathering everyone. It will be harder to use us against each other if we are all together. Denki nodded. Thank you, he sighed. No problem. Deku looked at his wife with a soft sigh. Mina hugged Achiko gently. Thank goodness he found you before you got hurt. Achiko hugged her back gently with a nod of her head. We need to get to the next room. Deku nodded. Let's go. He picked Denki up in his arms, carrying him to Tsu's room. He frowned when he opened the door to see Tsu holding his corpse and sobbing. That was off-putting to say the least. His body turned to ash as Tsu ran and wrapped her arms around him and Achiko. They both hugged her back. Hi Tsu. How are you? I'm fine. She looked at Deku for a long moment, frowning as she looked at her toes. Deku sighed. What did I do to you? Why you came into my room and said Achiko was dead? You were asking questions about if I knew anything that could have been wrong, and then you killed yourself right here. She stared at the foot of her bed sadly. Deku sighed. Well, Achiko and I are both fine. He wiped her eyes with a sigh. We're gathering everyone up. Tsu nodded, letting go of Achiko with a frown. She hadn't thought they would have anything on her. She had lived in Mexico for long enough. But there were still people she cared about in Japan. What a ridiculous thing for her to assume. She was just happy the Midoriyas were okay. Coming with us? Achiko murmured. Tsu nodded her head, letting go of them and huffing. You're okay? That baby is okay? I'm fine. Kez is fine. Everything is okay. Denki probably needs some stitches though. Tsu grabbed Achiko's hand as they walked down the hall a few more paces. Deku frowned when he heard Mirio scream. They all ran to Mirio and Tamaki's room and saw a woman who looked like Nijire turn to ash before them. What happened? Nijire. We woke up and she was just sitting at our door. Her chest was open and her face was halfway off. Deku frowned. Were either of you hurt? They both shook their heads as they stood up and Deku sighed. We are gathering everyone. Mirio nodded as he and Tamaki got out of bed, going to their side. Deku huffed, walked down the hall further. Who else do we have to get? We're not even halfway finished. Deku huffed, looking down at Deki with a sigh. His blood loss wasn't too substantial, but he looked at Eri. We are approaching your med bay, yes? We are. How quickly can you administer stitches? I'll do my best. It might take me 15 to 20 minutes though. Deku nodded. All right, we will stop to help Denki. Eri nodded, but Denki shook his head. Just go on without me. No. You and Eri are two of the most vulnerable people here. We aren't going anywhere without you. Denki nodded his head. Eri sighed. She didn't want all of these people hanging over her as she did a medical procedure, but she supposed everyone was probably going to be in the room when she assisted Achiko give birth to her baby. If she gave birth on this base. Hopefully she wouldn't. Deku frowned. You okay, Eri? I'm fine. I'm fine. Do you want to go find Momo? Because I might need her. Deku nodded. Good idea. Where is she? She's been staying in Shoto's room. Denki groaned. Deku nodded his head. Achiko and I will go get them. You guys get to the med bay. Chiko frowned. But Dash. I told you, you're not leaving my side tonight. Achiko nodded, following Deku to Shoto and Momo's room. Deku frowned when he walked into the room where Shoto was holding Momo in his arms. She was sobbing. What happened? Shoto shook his head. Has she visited you guys? Shoto nodded. She was playing with Yayorozu. Deku frowned. Are you okay? Momo nodded. I just miss Kyoka. Deku sighed, looking at his feet with a frown. Well, we need your help stitching Denki up. Shoto frowned. What happened to Kaminari? She convinced him to hold a bomb to his chest. Achiko murmured. Momo nodded, standing up. Shoto sighed, standing with her. Are you both okay? Momo cleared her throat. I'm fine. Shoto nodded his head too, going with Deku and Achiko to the med bay. We're going to go get Kaken and Kirishima. We'll be right back. Eri nodded her head. Okay. Katsuki frowned when he woke up in the middle of the night and Kirishima wasn't next to him. He got out of the bed with a sigh. Usually he woke him up before he went anywhere. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes and uttering a curse under his breath as he walked out the door. What the hell? He couldn't see or hear anything. Looking through the halls, the smell of blood getting thicker and thicker. What the F had he slept through? He was getting closer, closer. Were all of his friends dead? He frowned when he felt someone grab his arm. He swung his arm around, landing a punch, just as pain shot through his face. He frowned, tasting blood before realizing he deserved it. Cheeks, I'm sorry, I just dash. It's fine. I shouldn't have grabbed you. You okay? I'm fine. I think you upset Deku mostly. Didn't even fall over. Deku sighed. It's fine. Katsuki sighed, looking at Achiko. She was getting big. They needed to get her out of here. He looked at Deku with a sigh. He couldn't imagine how he was feeling. Hell, he was gripping her tightly enough. Katsuki wondered. How are you doing? Deku huffed. They're attacking the base. We're gathering everyone up. We need to find Nijire Hado and Tenya. Where is Kirishima? I was just looking for him. Katsuki frowned. Deku frowned too. Hopefully he was okay. They had made it through the night without any casualties so far. He huffed. Everything was fine. Everything was going to be okay. Achiko put her hand on his shoulder gently. I'm sure everything is okay. She huffed. Have you heard anything? Not until I saw you too. Deku nodded. Well, we do have a few more rooms to look through. They're probably all in one. Katsuki nodded. Kirishima never left without telling him first. He never did. Something was wrong. Deku sighed, leading them out of the room. Achiko and I heard yelling in the room across the hall. I'm going to ask that you let Dash. Deku frowned when he saw that Katsuki had already opened the door to the room, running to catch up with him. He frowned. Seeing Kirishima holding Nijir in his arms, she was awake and looked calm, but Deku was pretty sure he could see her bone poking through her calf. Was Tenya with you? He went to find help. Katsuki frowned. I was right across the effing hall. I swear, man, I went to find you and I didn't see you in there. Deku sighed. What happened? Nijir groaned. I heard Eri scream. I went to see what was going on. The floor opened underneath me. And it had teeth. I thought it was going to take my leg. Deku frowned, looking at it. Surely there was something they could do, right? Nijir couldn't lose her leg. He looked at Katsuki. His face was green. He wasn't usually squeamish. We need to get them to the med bay. He sighed. We can talk after. Katsuki nodded, looking at Kirishima and then at Achiko and Deku. Everything was fine. Achiko was okay. The kid was okay. Deku was okay. And hair gel was okay. He just needed to calm down. He looked at Deku with a sigh. Hopefully we will see Ida on our way to the med bay. Deku sighed, leading Achiko towards Eri and everyone else. Are you okay to carry Nijir? He asked, looking at Kirishima, who nodded. Yeah. I wasn't hurt. Not physically. Deku nodded, happy to hear it. He looked at Nijir and huffed. He frowned when he heard noise in the distance. I think we found Tenya. Deku huffed. You three go to the med bay. Achiko and I are going to check it out. Katsuki frowned but he nodded, going with his husband to the med bay. Deku sprinted towards the noise. He could have sworn Achiko was right behind him, until he heard her scream. Deku frowned. Turning around, he heard Ida's voice. Uraraka. Deku felt his heart sinking. Tenya was one way, Achiko was the other way. Can either one of you walk? Deku murmured. Why Yedi-kukan? I'm coming. I'm coming. Deku frowned. You don't sound good, Oka. Tenya groaned. He was tangled up, but he would never forgive himself if the Midoriya family was harmed for his sake. Where were you hurt, your Mrs. Midoriya? I'm fine. I'm fine. She whimpered. Deku heard her trying to stand. He heard Tenya's engines trying to go. He sighed, trying to hear which one of them was closer. Were they both real? Deku wanted to cry, but he knew he couldn't. Deku started towards his wife, running back the way he had originally gone. He frowned as he found his wife being held off the ground by her wrists and each of her individual fingers. He frowned, beginning to cry. Tenya was probably caught in a similar thing. If Achiko lost any of her fingers, surely she wouldn't lose her quirk, right? She was bleeding and she was probably in pain, but she wouldn't die if she was left there. Tenya had probably been tangled up for longer. He couldn't save Achiko first because she was his wife, but she was right here. He frowned, trying to get her wrists free. He was scared she would bleed to death, but he wasn't sure what to do. He was crying. Tenya sighed. Be careful, Midoriya. The more you pull on one, the more the other ones tighten. Where are hers located? Her fingers, her wrists. Well, I'm certainly glad that you went to her first. Deku huffed. I'm sorry, Tenya. I'll be there soon. She's unconscious. I can't dash, he whimpered. No. Midoriya. I can assure you, I am fine. They are only around my engines. I can wait as long as you need me to. Deku nodded. Thank you. Can you tell me more about how they behave? He heard Achiko whine. He wondered if he ever had heard her voice. How much of this was illusion? Was Tenya real? He huffed, starting to cry as he untangled Achiko's wrist. He had to get her wrists out first. He went to the other side, working on her other wrist. He frowned. He had gotten one wrist out and the rest of them hadn't taken her wrist and fingers yet. He took his knife out, cutting the rope. He frowned as she fell to the floor. There was a lot of blood. He wasn't sure what was going on, where the blood was coming from. He assessed it with a sigh. He couldn't see anything. It wasn't good. He lifted her, running to Tenya, trying to untangle him, but they just kept getting tighter. So they're on your engines and your ankles? Yes. So if you can get my right ankle and I'll get my left one at the same time. Deku nodded. Okay. On 3. They counted to 3 and tore the vines. Deku sighed. He should have gotten Ida first. Ida could have helped. Ida sighed as he heard his engines break from the vines wrapped around them. He looked at Achiko sadly. He hoped she was okay. Deku huffed. Can you walk? I can. Deku nodded. Great, let's get you to the med bay. He wiped his eyes. He felt like an idiot. He should have let her go with Katsuki and Kirishima, then this never would have happened. If he could have saved Ida first, they could have gotten her out together. He looked at Ida with tears in his eyes. I can feel her bleeding. Ida sighed. I can try to use my engines to get her to the med bay quicker. Deku shook his head. No. He sighed, shaking his head as they got to the med bay. Katsuki frowned when he heard Deku sobbing. Kirishima grabbed his arm to prevent him from leaving. He frowned as he carried Achiko to the med bay. The shoulder of his costume was red with blood. The sleeves of Achiko's costume were shredded and her eyes were closed. Momo went to them, offering them the bed Denki had just gotten off of. Deku felt himself begin to sob harder when he realized Achiko was missing 4 of her fingers. Eri sighed. It's okay. It's okay. I can fix her hand, she murmured. But if you dash, it should be fine for the baby. Deku frowned. I can get her fingers so that dash. Eri sighed, nodding her head. Yes. Take dynamite. Go get her fingers. Bring them to me. She could use her quirk, but she wasn't sure how it would affect Achiko's baby. She didn't want to risk hurting it. Deku nodded sadly, looking at Katsuki who offered him his hand. Should I get your engines too, Tenya? Not necessary, Midoriya. Deku nodded, going with Katsuki back into the dark. Deku cried silently as he walked ahead of Kaken, looking for his wife's fingers. He heard voices in the distance, but he ignored them. He offered his hand back to Katsuki with a sigh. Katsuki hesitated, but he took it. How are you feeling, Deku? Like my wife is missing 4 fingers because of me. Deku whimpered. And we're going to find them and she's going to be fine. She's going to wake up in pain and covered in stitches, and I don't know if she'll get to use her quirk again, and it's all my fault. If I had just rescued Ida first, she might still have dash. If you keep talking about everything you could have done differently, you'll drive yourself insane. Yeah. And if I stop talking, the voices down the hallways will drive me insane. Deku huffed. Katsuki sighed. Still using your kid to F with you? Yeah. He whimpered, looking at his feet with a frown, and Achiko. Katsuki sighed. They're going to be fine. No one is going to let them die. Deku looked at his feet sadly but nodded, realizing he was lost. No, he needed to find Achiko's fingers. He couldn't get lost in one of her stupid time travel maze things. Deku fell to his knees, beginning to sob. Katsuki frowned. What's wrong? I don't know what way the fingers are. I'm lost and I have no idea how much time has passed since we left. She can manipulate time. As far as I know, Achiko's fingers are rotting. Katsuki huffed. So that's it then? You give up? I'm not giving up. He looked at his knees sadly. Do you hear anything? Katsuki nodded, pointing in the same direction Deku heard his unborn daughter calling him from. So we should go the opposite direction, right? Katsuki nodded as they both went away from their illusions. Deku felt his legs getting tired, his vision blurring as he frowned. I think we went the wrong way. Yeah. It seems that way, doesn't it? I swear to God if you start crying again, dash. I can't help it. Cheeks is peeing, not you. I don't know why you've been crying so much these past few months. Katsuki knew that he was just tired, but he was in no mood to listen to Deku whine. Let's just turn around. What if it's too late? What if Achiko can't have her fingers back? She can have a robot hand. She won't be able to use her quirk. Maybe if she only lost 1 or 2 fingers, but she pretty much lost her entire right hand. Worst case scenario, Eri has already used her quirk on Achiko to get her fingers back. I don't think she would do that without my consent. I don't think Achiko would let her either. If Achiko won't let Eri help, that's on her. Achiko is worried about the baby. We don't know what a rewind quirk would do to a FTS. Katsuki huffed. I'm sure Achiko will be okay, even if she can't use her quirk, okay? She's alive, she's fine, your baby is fine. There is no way for us to know that. We are trapped in a maze and we have no idea how much time has passed or if Achiko is alive. Deku whimpered. We have no idea what is happening. Ever at all. Katsuki rolled his eyes. He had half a mind to leave him here, but he knew he couldn't. Let's just go back. But which way is back, Kaken? We have gone 200,000 paces this direction. We will go 200,000 paces this way and see where we end up. Katsuki huffed. It's not the best, but it's what we have. Deku nodded sadly. Following Katsuki down the corridor, he grabbed his hand, terrified to lose him in all of the nonsense. He knew this hallway could swallow him whole, and he would have no idea until it was too late. He wouldn't let his child grow up without a father. It wasn't going to happen. Katsuki sighed when he began to smell blood. We are getting close to the illusions. I suggest you put your hands over your ears. We're going to follow the smell of blood. My guess is the fingers are buried in them. Deku nodded his head sadly. Okay. Katsuki took a deep breath, heading towards their greatest fears with Deku by his side. Deku was quiet by his side, his hands over his ears and his eyes closed as he mumbled to himself, crying. Katsuki sighed. You can't do that. You will get lost. Deku huffed, taking his hands off of his ears and taking Katsuki's hand again. Izuku. Yeah. There's no one I would rather face my demons with. Deku smiled at him weakly. Me too. He sighed, nodding once, though he very much would rather be curled up with his wife, arguing about the gender of their future child. He sighed. Katsuki's chest hurt. His heart was beating hard. He heard the screams. He smelled the blood. He was terrified to see it, the bodies piled up. It didn't matter really if it was his friends, his family, or just civilians, piles of bodies. Unmarked graves. He saw them every time he closed his eyes. She couldn't hurt him with his fears, because every time he left a battlefield they came true. He always failed. He never brought every man onto the field off of it again, and he hated himself for it. First man on the battlefield, last man off, but it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. He wasn't enough. Deku sighed as he looked at the ground. The smell of blood is probably Ochiko's. Could also be Kaminari's. But if it's Denki's, we've gone too far. Deku frowned, right? He really couldn't remember. He sighed. He was getting more worried with the minute. He wanted his wife to be okay. He wanted his baby to be okay. He huffed. Katsuki slipped into the room where he heard Kirishima screaming, looked at his husband, bleeding to death, begging him for help, eyes brimming with tears as he walked inside, Kirishima's hands gripping his calf. He tried so hard to ignore the screams of agony, the blood smearing on his pants. Why did it feel so real? He kept going forward. Kirishima was heavy. He said, "Shut up a minute," he huffed. He saw the vines hanging from the roof, covered with blood. He went to get them, but he didn't see anything in their grasp. These must be different vines than the ones that took Ochiko. Deku frowned when he saw his wife. It was an obvious illusion. She was smiling in her hero costume that she hadn't fit into in months. She gave him a 5-fingered wave and he felt sick to his stomach as he realized what he had to do. He started sobbing as he went to his wife. She pulled him into a hug, kissing his forehead. Deku-kun. Deku felt his eyes fill with tears as he pulled a knife out of his utility belt. Deku-kun I-. Deku felt himself sobbing as he pinned his wife to the floor. Katsuki frowned. He wanted to push Deku off of his husband, but he knew he couldn't, so he sat on the floor, burying his face in his hands and trying to collect himself, watching his friend scream the words, "I'm sorry," over and over as he sobbed and cut the fingers from Kirishima's pinky to his index finger. "I'm sorry," Deku whimpered. "Deku? What are you doing?" The fear in her voice was so real. Deku's hands were shaking so much. He couldn't mutilate the fingers. "Steady hand. Deku, please, what did I do? Why are you? What are you doing?" Deku was sobbing, bruises forming on his wife where he grabbed her. He knew it wouldn't happen that quickly, but it hurt him all the same. He cut the pinky, listening to the sobs turn to wails of pain. He cut the rest with one swipe and the apparition turned to ash. He stood up and Katsuki stood up with him. The F was that? They were trying to hide them. Deku replied, "But I found them, at the cost of my sanity. I found them." Deku sighed. "Now we just have to get back to the med bay." Katsuki nodded. He huffed as he watched the base begin to condense. 20 rooms turned to 4. He looked at Deku with a frown. Had they defeated her? Or had she just lost interest and moved on? What was going on? Should we trust Dash? Deku sighed. I'm just going to go the direction I think the med bay is. He replied, not going to question if it's a trick or some sort of mind fuckery. I'm just going to go the way I think it is. Katsuki huffed, nodding his head. They made their way back to the med bay. Ochako was awake and crying, but it did look like they had only been gone a night. Deku ran to Ochako, kissing her and handing the fingers to Momo. He held her head in his hands, kissing between her eyes. I love you so much. You have no idea. I love you, love you, love you. Ochako smiled weakly. I was worried I wouldn't see you again. They said you went to find my fingers and I was terrified. Dash. She shook her head, wiping her eyes gently. Well, I'm here now. And they're going to reattach your fingers, and I'll hold your good hand the whole time. Ochako nodded, kissing him gently one more time. I love you, Deku-kun, she murmured. I love you too, Oka. How is the baby? He's fine, I'm pretty sure anyways. No problems with that part of me. Deku nodded, good. He pressed a hand to her stomach with a sigh. The months following that night were suspiciously calm. Denki and Nijir recovered from their wounds and Ochako did the same. There was a sort of uneasiness around the base as her stomach grew, and it became more and more likely that she would be giving birth on the base. Deku refused to leave her side, and so Katsuki wasn't sure what to do. He wanted to get them out of that hellhole, but Deku was worried about Ochako going into labor while he was away. He said he had to be absolutely sure they would be ending it if he was leaving his wife's side, and Katsuki wasn't sure what that meant. He couldn't be absolutely sure of anything, but he also understood Deku's reluctance to leave Ochako in her current state, so he waited. He let Deku sleep in the same room as his wife for months, but he made sure to keep him aware that he was needed to stop her eventually. I think we need to dash. He frowned when he saw Deku's eyes well up with tears. He huffed, what the hell, Deku? I've never seen you drag your feet like this. Last time I left base I missed 3 months. What if I leave and miss even more? He made peace with missing my child's birth. I can't make peace with missing any more. Well, I hate to break it to you, but if you plan to continue hero work, you're going to miss a lot more than that. Deku frowned. Well, maybe I don't, he sighed. What? I don't know if I can keep doing this, Kakin. I'm not making any decisions right now, but if we go home, I am at least taking some paternity leave. Katsuki nodded. Okay. I'm sure we can do that, alright? But right now, I think we need to worry about getting everyone home, don't you? Deku nodded, wiping his eyes. See, can I have tonight? To say goodbye. Of course. Katsuki sighed, looking at him with a frown. Everything is going to be okay though. I'm not going to let anything happen to you. Deku nodded sadly. Who is going to protect her? Shoto. Yaoyorozu. La Million. Any of the other 100 heroes here. Deku nodded sadly. I guess you're right, he murmured, wiping his eyes, but I won't be there. I think Cheeks has come to terms with you going out to save the world. She knew what she was signing up for. Deku nodded sadly, but I just keep asking her to sacrifice more and more. Well, you will both get a break soon. Katsuki sighed, looking at Deku and sighed at his feet. Deku nodded his head. I hope so. He turned around, going back to his wife who was curled up with Toga when he got to their room. Can we have some privacy? Toga nodded. Okay. She sighed, standing up and leaving the room. Deku wrapped his arms around his wife, wrapping an arm around her belly gently as he yawned. I love you. He murmured. I love you so much, he whimpered, beginning to cry. Ochako started crying too, holding him back. You have to go, don't you? In the morning. But I'll be home before you know it. And I'll be the best father ever. I'll take paternity leave, and make sure you get plenty of sleep, and we'll be a happy family. You, me, and Tashinori. Ochako nodded sadly. She had always known it was likely he wouldn't be there when she had their baby. Just being faced with it made her so sad. Deku looked at her sadly, kissing her and rubbing her belly. I'll be home soon. I promise. He rested his forehead against hers and sighed, closing his eyes. I love you both so much. We love you too. She murmured. Deku looked at her sadly. pressing his lips to her belly with a sigh. I'm going to end this, and maybe our baby will be born in a hospital, or at the very least, she can sleep in a bed of her very own. He murmured. He thought about his apartment, no doubt in poor condition, and Ochako hadn't been pregnant when they came here, so they would need to prepare their home for the baby they had conceived in hell. We'll have to buy him his very own bed. And a car seat and dash. Don't stress yourself out, Machi. Everything is okay. She nodded her head. She wasn't sure how far along she was, 7 or 8 months, her child was due soon. She knew that. Deku pressed a hand to her belly with a sigh. He stood up after a minute. Should we go find Toga? Do you want her to come back? We should discuss your birth plan. Do you want her to have a vial of my blood so you can feel safer? She has my mannerisms and speech patterns down, so if you need to feel like I'm there dash. Deku started to cry again. What was he doing? He was doing what was necessary. He told himself. Ochako nodded sadly. That would be nice. Deku nodded, kissing her gently. We'll talk to her about it later. I will make sure you are comfortable. Nothing was going to make up for him missing this. One day his child would be reminding him that he wasn't there for her birth as part of her villain origin story. He hugged his wife close, kissing her. Please forgive me for not being here, he sighed, and I hope our child will too. Deku, you're going to save me and our baby and all of our friends. Of course we forgive you. You're the #1 hero. It's your responsibility. Well, maybe after this. I don't need to be the #1 hero anymore. Deku murmured. Ochako frowned. You don't mean that. I do. I want to be there for you and for Toshinori. I'm not going to raise a Shigaraki. I'm going to be a good dad. He pressed his face to her belly and kissed it before looking up at her, which means nothing can be more important than her. Deku Deku shook his head. He cried softly, holding his wife close as he stood up and kissed her gently. I love you, Oka. I love our baby. You know that, right? Of course I know that. Ochako said softly. And I'm not going to be a deadbeat. I swear. I'm going to be there the whole time. Okay. Ochako murmured, pinging her head to the side. I know you are. I wouldn't have asked to have a baby if I thought you would be a bad father. But you said, when we started trying, you said I was never home. That I wasn't stable and you were worried one day I wouldn't come home. And I will always be worried about that, but it's okay. How? How are you okay with that? Because I love you. I've loved you since I was a kid. I don't know who I am without you. But you don't seem to know who you are with me either. Deku sighed. Deku, I am pregnant with your child. You are going back into battle tomorrow. This really isn't the time to be bringing up our past fights. Let's talk about our future. Our past has no place tonight. Deku nodded, kissing between her eyes. That's fair enough. Ochako's hand pressed to his cheek, forcing the thoughts that this might be their last night together from her head as she sighed. Deku kissed her deeply, pulling her into his lap and holding her close. I love you. He murmured. I love you. She replied, looking at his eyes. And Kazuku loves you too. Deku smiled at her, looking at her belly and smiling a little bit more. That was his baby growing in there. He was going to be a father. He would go fight this war, and when he came home he just might be a daddy. He looked at her eyes and sighed. What can I do for you tonight? Just hold me. Tell me about whatever you want to talk about. Deku nodded his head sadly, feeling like she was feeding him his last meal. There was no saying if or when he was coming home. He supposed it would be nice to hold her for one more night. Feel his child stirring and hear her breathing for one more night. He said, I'll talk to Toga in the morning. Tonight is just about you and me. Ochako smiled weakly, kissing him gently. Chapter text. TW blood gore infant death major character death. It's pretty gnarly, guys. Deku smiled sadly as he woke up next to his wife, curled against his chest. He ran his fingers through her hair and sighed when she opened her eyes. He kissed between her eyes and rubbed her back. I love you, Curbs. He sighed. He climbed out of the bed and watched her get up too. He looked at her belly and felt sad. He got on his knees with a sigh. Daddy has to go. I'll be back as soon as I can, I promise. I love you so much, Toshinori. He gently pressed a kiss to her belly, tears filling his eyes as he felt a little kick against his face. I don't think it's a reason to kick my face, he said softly, laughing weakly as he wiped his tears. He hoped he would make it back for his child's birth, but he doubted he would. He stood up, kissing his wife and hugging her close. He listened to her cry and nuzzled her cheek. Everything is going to be okay. When I get back, we can take our little one home. Ochako nodded her head. If he came home. I'm going to give Toga a few vials of blood, one for if you go into labor while I'm gone, and a few extras for in case you need me for something else. Ochako nodded sadly, forcing herself not to cry as she nuzzled his cheek. Just promise she'll get the real thing too. Deku nodded his head. I promise. He knew it wasn't a promise he should make, but the words left his lips before he could stop them. I love you both so much. We love you too. Ochako sighed, pressing her hand to her back as she stood up. Deku hugged her close, kissing her deeply one more time. Ochako kissed him back, holding him for a long moment before letting go of him and following him to Toga and handing her his blood. Toga frowned at him, giving him a gentle hug before he left. Deku sighed, hugging her back. I'll see you soon, Himiko-kun. I had better see you soon. I'm not ready to be a father. Toga replied, trying to make everyone feel just a little better. Deku smiled at her weakly. And you won't have to be, he sighed, going to meet with Katsuki at the door of the base. He was talking to Mirio. Are you sure you don't want to take more people? I can go, Tamaki, Kirishima. Bakugo shook his head. We have too many wounded people to take anyone else. I doubt that Beach can take me and Deku once we get through her bullshit. Mirio frowned, but he nodded, okay. Katsuki sighed, thank you though. He looked at Deku and Ochako and smiled weakly. He felt awful, seeing Ochako in this condition, but it was necessary. She smiled back at him just as sadly. We'll see you soon, cheeks. I know you will. She slipped her arms around him and hugged him goodbye. She then hugged her husband. Deku sighed, holding her in his arms for a long moment before kissing her for what might very well be the last time. He kissed her passionately, hands roaming her back as he tried to stay with her for as long as possible. He felt her pull away and so he let go of her, wiping his mouth and sighing. I love you both so much. He whimpered. And we love you. Ochako murmured, we'll see you soon. I'll see you soon. Deku smiled at her sadly, kissing her forehead and then her belly before getting up and following Katsuki out the door. And with his exit, Ochako fell to her knees and wept. Deku cried as Katsuki grabbed Deku's hand with a frown. You're okay. He sighed. Cheeks is safe, everything is going to be okay. Before you know it, you'll be going home to your brat. Deku sighed. I hope you're right. Have I ever been wrong? Do you want the list chronologically? I have it arranged before All Might and after. Deku. Katsuki laughed. I'm not sure if you're joking. I am. Deku laughed. But I can give it to you if you really want it. Maybe another time. Deku nodded his head with a sigh. They walked all day, before setting up camp for the night. Go to sleep, Deku, I'll take the first shift. Deku frowned, but he nodded, thanks Kaken. Well, from the sounds of it, you won't be getting much sleep once we get back to the base. Deku smiled at him sadly. He hoped that was true. He hoped his wife and baby would be okay. He sighed as he laid on the ground, pulling his blanket over himself and falling asleep. Sighed as he watched his friend fall asleep, looking across the horizon as he set a clock for 2 hours. He sighed as he looked down at Deku. He had gotten to sleep quickly enough, which was nice. He wanted good things for Deku. If anyone deserved to live happily ever after, it was him. Katsuki frowned when he heard noises, but he didn't go check. Everyone was on that base. They were. And if the base was attacked, they had 98 of Japan's top heroes on the case. But they kept getting louder, they deafening, like the nightmares he used to have in his early 20s. He put his hands over his ears, but he still heard them. Cries for help. Cries for loved ones who he hadn't been able to save. He remembered all of them. He always would. Katsuki felt pathetic as tears stung his eyes. Shut up. Dimmin it. Just shut the F up. The screams subsided and Katsuki took a breath as he felt rain begin to fall on his shoulders. He frowned slightly, it was warm. He put a hand on his shoulder and frowned, putting his arms over his head as gallons of blood rained from the sky onto his head. He held his breath and kept his head down so it didn't smother him, and he didn't get any in his mouth. It was over in 10 minutes, Katsuki smirked. I can last a lot longer than that beach. Katsuki yelled into the horizon. He was smug for a solid minute before his blood ran cold, as he looked to his feet, and realized Deku was no longer sleeping at them. Deku! He screamed, what the hell? Deku, sheet! Deku frowned when he woke up and he didn't see Katsuki. Kaken, he yelled. Kaken? Oh no, this was bad. This was very, very bad. He started to sob, cursing Katsuki's name as he tried to decide which way to go to find Katsuki. His heart fell out of his chest as realized there was a heavy smell of blood to the north. His entire body trembled as he went towards the odor, terrified to see what this monster had done to his best friend. He followed the scent of blood for what seemed like forever, to the point that it was becoming obvious that if he was tracing Katsuki's odor, Katsuki was moving, which was good, right? He also knew that there was a chance he wasn't going towards Katsuki at all, but he wasn't sure what to do about it. He would probably just roam this FING city for the rest of his life. Time meant nothing, as far as he knew his child was growing up without him. As far as he knew his child was dead. He thought about turning around, but at this point he just had to know what that awful smell was. The smell of blood, and as he got closer, the smell of decay got more and more obvious. His heart ached, his legs hurt, but he needed to know what that FNG smell was. His heart sank when he made his way back to the base. Why did the base smell like decay? His vision blurred with tears as he stepped through the door. The place was empty. Why could he smell it from miles away? Where were all of his friends? Where was his family? Ochako? He whimpered. Ochako! He screamed. Had they been gone for so long that they gave up? That they abandoned him? Deku screamed, falling on the floor and crying. What the F was he going to do? Then he heard something, a soft voice from a room down the hall. He got himself back on his feet and went towards the room. The smell of blood got more and more foul as he entered the room. He felt his heart break as he saw his wife laying alone in the med bay. No. Ochako whimpered, I can't go. Our son still needs me, she began to sob. What? Deku whimpered. You know I can't say no to him. That's why you're trying to take me with his face. Deku shook his head, going and standing by her side. What do you mean? Who is trying to take you? Don't be cruel. She whimpered, it's bad enough that I'm dying, don't lie to me about where you're taking me. I'm not ready to go. I just had a baby. He already doesn't have a dad. They left me here without me, he'll die. Deku was sobbing, I am not taking you anywhere. It's me. It's really me, Izuku. Your husband. You're alive? As far as I know. Deku whimpered, where is our son? We have a son? He smiled sadly. Can I see him? He saw the blood on her clothes but tried to stay calm. She would be okay, she had to be, right? Women bled when they gave birth, that was how it worked, surely she would be fine, right? Right? He looked at his wife sadly. Ochako nodded, smiling at him as she set a green-haired infant into his arms. Deku tried to seem happy, but all he could do was stare at Ochako, how much she was bleeding and how out of it she seemed. He looked down at his son, and he swallowed a sob. Green hair, freckles and eyes permanently closed. This baby was dead, but of course Ochako hadn't noticed. She was piercing the veil too. He's beautiful, Oka. I'll take it from here while you can rest. But Deku, if I close my eyes, I'm scared I'll dash. Don't worry, okay? I'll take care of him. Just rest. Deku whimpered. He knew there was no saving her, and even if there was, how would he get her home? Deku grabbed his wife's hand, watching the light fade from her eyes as he fell to his knees and began to sob. He screamed and cried for hours. It didn't make it better. He would never be okay again. Then he looked at his wife's hands. She was wearing a wedding ring, but it wasn't the one he had bought for her. Her fingers were missing the scars from being stitched back on. This wasn't his wife. Of course it wasn't. In what world would his friends abandon Ochako and their baby? He felt like an idiot, but he was beyond relieved. He stood up, looked at his family one more time. He would be seeing this in his nightmares for the rest of his life, but they would only be nightmares. God willing. They would only be nightmares. But how was he going to find Kaken? Katsuki felt hopeless. He had been looking for Deku for days, and he was beginning to fear the worst. Deku was the last person he would expect to succumb to his demons, so surely he was fine, right? Katsuki sighed. He ignored the screams pretty well. He knew he was too far away from the base to be hearing the screams of his friends. He was covered in blood, but he was fine. He was fine. He was fine. His heart skipped a beat when he saw some greasy green hair in the distance. He ran to Deku. He was laying on the ground, face down, which wasn't good. He lifted his friend into his arms with a frown. Deku. Deku looked up at Katsuki. They're dead, Kaken. Kaz and Ochako are dead. Katsuki frowned, ping his head to the side and shaking his head. How could you know that, Deku? We haven't made it back to the base. We have no way to use our phones. I saw her, Kaken. I saw them both. She tried to find me. She went into labor and she couldn't make it back to the base. She died. She died looking for me. Katsuki frowned. He looked at the blood on Deku. If it had been an illusion, the blood would have gone away when he walked away from her. Deku had lost his wife and his child because of him. Deku Deku sobbed, burying his face in his hands. I missed the birth of my son. I missed the death of my son. I missed his entire life. And Ochako is dead because of me. He looked at Katsuki angrily. I never should have left with you. I never should have listened to you. It really couldn't have waited a few days? I couldn't have stayed a few days longer to see my child's birth? To be there for my wife when she needed me? Deku, I was just Why am I always the one who has to make the sacrifice? You guys are all heroes too. Deku Shut up. Deku whimpered, I hate you. I hate all of you. That's fair, Izuku. I'm sorry. I don't care. Katsuki nodded, that's fair too. He huffed, his heart was broken, but he couldn't imagine what Deku was experiencing. I'll bleed out soon anyways. Deku sighed. Katsuki's heart sank, so that wasn't Ochako's blood on his costume. Deku, what the hell did you do? I don't have a reason to keep going. I'm done. Katsuki's eyes filled with tears. Izuku Midoriya. Tell me you didn't Not on purpose. But I don't intend to get it medical attention either. Deku huffed. I want to see my wife and child, he whimpered. Katsuki looked at him, horrified. Deku, please. Let me stitch you up. No. Then I'm sorry. Katsuki ripped Deku's hero costume, pinning him down and looking at how bad the wound was. He looked at Deku sadly. Deku was trying to fight him off, but he wasn't strong enough. Katsuki tried to stitch him up, but the wound was too big. Lie still, damn it. But Deku refused and Katsuki watched the light fade from his eyes. Good night, Kaken. Katsuki started to cry, grabbing Deku's shoulders and shaking them. Deku. Wake up. Damn it. But Deku didn't move. Katsuki stood up, carrying Deku's body towards what he assumed was the base. He frowned when he heard something in the distance. Kaken? Kaken. Bakugo cringed at the sound of his voice, picking up speed in the other direction. Kaken. Wait for me. Bakugo sighed, turning around and looking at Deku. He looked like sheet, but he wasn't bleeding. He frowned as the Deku in his arms turned to ash, running towards the real Deku with tears in his eyes. He wrapped his arms around him and sobbed. I thought you were gone. Deku shook his head. I can't be dead. I have to get home to my wife and kid. Katsuki breathed a sigh of relief, so Cheeks was fine too. He hugged Deku for a second longer, letting go of him with a sigh. Any idea as to where she is? Deku shook his head. I have no idea. She has to be close though. She's obviously watching us. Deku nodded his head. What are we going to do though? I don't know how to fight her. My guess is once we get to her, it'll be easy. Can't imagine she's great at hand-to-hand combat. Deku nodded, I guess. Katsuki sighed. How are you though? Are you okay? I'm fine. I know what I saw wasn't really Ochako. Still messed with me though. Deku huffed. Understandable. Katsuki sighed. I appreciate you being here, Deku. Thanks. I appreciate you being here too, Kaken. Are you okay? I'm fine. Katsuki sighed. Good. Deku sighed, hugging him gently. I love you, Kaken. I love you too, Deku. Katsuki huffed. Let's go get that beach. Deku nodded. Let's go get her. With that they ran towards the screams of their friends. None of them were real. All of their friends were safe at the base. Deku frowned as they got through the madness to see the woman he had seen at the beginning of all of this. He was about to take action when Bakugo jumped on him. What the heck, Kaken? He yelled, pushing his friend off of him with a huff. He kicked him as he tried to lunge the cat girl. Bakugo jumped on him again, knocking him to the ground. Deku groaned, kicking at him and trying to push him off. Kaken! What are you doing? He whimpered as he tried to fight him off. He pushed him off with his feet, not wanting to hurt him too badly. He was wounded. He stood up lunging at the cat girl as he felt Katsuki yank him backwards. Deku kicked him again, squirming in his arms as he screamed, Kaken! Please! He whimpered. Katsuki frowned. He thought he was fighting the cat girl, but she wouldn't be pulling her punches like this. He set Deku down with a frown. Sorry, I thought I dash. It's fine. Deku sighed, pointing at the real Necrokitty with a frown as she morphed to look like his wife. Deku sighed. Looks like he's going to fight his wife. Katsuki sighed. You can sit this one out, Deku. Deku shook his head. I'm not going to let you do that. Katsuki sighed but nodded. If you insist. I do. Deku and Bakugo ran to her. The battle was over in a second. They got her detained quickly. She really wasn't very strong without her illusions. Hey friends. This was originally meant to be Deku and Bakugo fighting All Might, but I decided not to do it as I saw your next in theaters last night and it just felt cheap to do it after that. I'm sorry it's boring and anticlimactic. This is the reason for the rewrite. One more chapter that will hopefully be up tonight. TW childbirth. Ochako frowned when she woke up to strong pain in her abdomen. She shook Toga awake with a whine. Himikoken. I think it's time. It's 3 Oka. It's not time for anything. I'm having contractions. Toga yawned. The baby is coming. Toga frowned. Why didn't you just say that? She huffed, feeling around for her vial of Deku's blood. Ochako frowned. Don't pretend to be Deku. I think it'll just upset me with everything going on. Toga nodded. Okay. She knew it would hurt Deku's feelings if he found out, but this was really about Ochako's comfort. Toga grabbed her and pulled her to the med bay as she cried in pain. Toga got her on the bed before going to get Momo and Eri. No. Please don't leave me, Himikoken. Ochako whined as she saw eyes in the distance began to sob. She curled in the fetal position and tried to stop the pain. She was terrified. She heard footsteps in the distance and tried to force a smile when Momo, Eri, and Toga came back to her. You're okay. Toga murmured, going to Ochako's side and holding her hand gently. Ochako whimpered, holding her hand tightly. News spread around the base that Ochako had gone into labor and everyone came to help, much to Ochako's dismay. She was in horrible pain, and she was surrounded by people, none of whom were the person she wanted to be there. She kept crying for Deku, knowing he wouldn't make it in time to see the birth of their child, and what would likely be the end of her life. She was bleeding. She could see it, she could hear them yelling codes that she understood. She was bleeding too much. The baby was coming out wrong. Everything was wrong. She kept sobbing, praying. Please don't let me die. Please let me and my baby just be okay. Please let us be okay. And Deku. Please let Deku be okay too. Eri was crying, and of course she was still a kid. She shouldn't be here. But she had gone to war at her age, so what did she know? Mirio told her to get out. Eri tried to argue but he was insistent. Eri left and Ochako began to feel a little more hopeless. She cried for her parents, she cried for her husband, she even cried for Himiko who was in the room. She was just in so much pain she couldn't see her. Everyone sounded so frantic. Everyone was so worried. Ochako heard the words emergency cesarean before the world went black. Deku and Katsuki got to the base with Necrokitty in a matter of days. Deku broke down in tears when they got to the door and no one was watching it. He got inside and started screaming. Ochako? Machi? Mirio ran down the hall and looked at Deku with a frown. Deku started sobbing. Is my wife okay? My baby? Mirio forced a smile. You have a healthy baby boy. And Ochako is alive. Deku nodded as tears streaked his face. So what's wrong then? We had to perform a C-section, but Eri used her quirk so she should be okay. She just hasn't woken up. We think she will. She just hasn't. Deku frowned, but he nodded. She's breathing. Physically, she's fine. She just hasn't woken up yet. Mirio said. Deku nodded. Can I see her? Mirio nodded, leading him down the hallway. Deku felt himself tense up as he saw all the bloody sheets. He began to crumble, falling to his knees. No. Mirio frowned. Deku, what dash? I don't know if I can take much more of this. You're leading me to Ochako's body. I mean, that's a grim way to put it, but yes? I'm leading you to Ochako's sleeping body. But she's not sleeping, is she, Mirio? She's dead. Or close to it. Ochako woke up to the sound of crying. Case. Eri's face lit up. Mrs. Midoriya. You're awake. Is my baby okay? He's doing well. He's with Toga right now. Ochako nodded, but he's crying. Eri frowned. I don't think that's Kaz. Ochako's eyes filled with tears. Deku-kun. Eri frowned as Ochako got out of bed and ran to the hallway. Mrs. Midoriya, you should be laying down. Mirio grinned. When did she wake up? Just now. Deku ran to her and kissed her forehead and then her lips. I was so worried about you. He whimpered, but it's over now. We can go home. We can take our baby boy home. Ochako nodded her head. Are you sure? We got her. Deku said with a nod. We can go home, he murmured, kissing between her eyes and sighing. Toga came to them with Kaz in her arms. Deku started sobbing, and Ochako did the same. He's perfect. Deku whimpered, hugging her close and kissing her cheek. He is. Ochako replied with a smile as she took their son into her arms and snuggled him. Deku looked down at his baby and sighed. He was perfect. Big brown eyes, little pink cheeks and freckles, a lot of green hair. Deku was a dad, and he didn't know if he had ever been so overwhelmed by happiness. He hugged his wife and kissed her cheek. I love you both so much. Deku whimpered, and I am going to start taking steps towards retirement as soon as we get home. Deku murmured. Deku-kun. Nothing is more important than him. Deku murmured. He stared at his son with tears in his eyes. The most beautiful boy. Perfect in every way. To think there had been a time where he was worried he wouldn't love this child, but now looking at him, he was overcome by emotion. He was a daddy. He looked at Ochako with a grin and kissed her gently. Motherhood suits you, Oka. Fatherhood suits you. Deku grinned. They took their son home that night. Inko and the Urarakas had prepared their house for Kaz. Deku found a successor and was a full-time teacher by the time Kaz turned 11. But I have lots of fics about Kaz. Sorry these last chapters are lazy. I didn't intend to finish this FIC, but people were reading it, so I decided to at least give it a lazy ending. If you want a better version, read my rewrite, which is linked in the next chapter.